Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto created a criminal organization. When Naruto Uzumaki's dream of becoming Hokage is seemingly stolen from him, he discovers a new path. One even more difficult and harder to reach. With a family of his own making, he will take the world by storm, showing them that rogues and outcasts of the world can stand at the top. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 19, Blade of Purpose. Sparks flew as their swords scraped together, pushing against one another as they clashed for the dozenth time this morning. In terms of speed and strength, he was undoubtedly superior. Rather, he would be under his normal, unrestricted weight. His movements were definitely more sluggish now. So his fast speed was no longer his key to win. It was his greater experience that made the difference. At least, by the technique and skills of his swordsmanship. It was just a difference of focus and preference, he figured. Priorities lying in different fighting styles. Sazanami was a swordsman. His opponent and their annoying new tag-along, Hokushin, was a ninja. Pushing forward, he used the momentum to throw the shinobi off balance, taking an extra step forward to make use of a new technique he learned from his newly acquired training materials. Using the guard and the back of the blade, he would almost rip the opponent's sword from their grasp in a single motion, his other arm pushing forward to strike the target away to build momentum. The technique was called Hakusaku. Initially he had wondered how it could be considered kenjutsu when it required pushing your opponent away with your bare hand. Seemed a little strange by normal standards. Even with misgivings, he didn't really have a choice in the matter for using it. The technique had been one few that required no chakra to perform, and well, results couldn't be argued with. The huffy ninja's blade went flying out of his hands. In any other moment it would be considered his victory. Rather, when he was just a simple bounty hunter, it meant that the capture or win was certain. Not anymore. Not letting the loss of his weapon stop his chance to gloat, Hokushin leapt back, throwing a barrage of shuriken at him. There were 5 in all, grouped together well and flying straight for his torso. His best move would be to evade. If he wasn't weighed down, he would do that. For this spar he knew the shuriken were blunted, seeing as he was the one who made them for training purposes. At worst he would get some nasty bruises on his skin and his pride. The blue-haired fool in front of him liked to push his buttons. Unlike Naruto, they didn't have that same amount of wit and good nature to them. For Hokushin it was just him trying to sound superior, which he wasn't. A point he would prove right now. Since the day before their departure from the land of birds a week ago, Sazanami had been practicing the power that ninjas harnessed, chakra. The materials Naruto had given to Sasami for safekeeping had elaborated more on just who utilized it. Samurai. That had been a game changer for him. His knowledge on samurai was much more in-depth than what the others had. As a former bladesmith, he had interacted with many samurai looking for a sword in which to do battle. Although the interactions varied, they seemed to favor the more straight and narrow fighting than he tended to avoid. By their standards, his methods were more rugged and deceitful for the honorable way of the sword. Luckily he didn't intend to become one. By whatever means were available to him, then he would use it. Any technique that would bring him out of a tough situation. If the words in the manual were accurate, then he didn't have to learn everything about the shinobi either, as a samurai's power rivaled and could eclipse that of shinobi if trained properly. That was his goal at the moment, to gain the power samurai had, using their method of utilizing chakra to make his blade into something that could slay monsters. As he found out, the old saying, easier said than done, struck hard and fast from day one. It was rather simple in instruction. Pulling on this internal energy within him, drawing it out and coating his blade. During Menma's jutsu, where he felt that surge of power, he knew what to grab at. It was like there was a surge of power in him that he had all along but never consciously used. Power that he was finding difficult to control. It was like trying to lift a full barrel of water with no lid. Heavy, unbalanced, and wild. Drawing it out towards the end of his blade and blasting it forward towards the 5 pieces of metal fast approaching. The chaotic and wild blue energy was visible for a few moments as it sent them flying away. That was as far as he had gotten. He fell to his knee, gasping for breath. One blast was all he could manage before tiring himself for nearly an hour. That had been the biggest deterrent in his training thus far. Having to take those breaks because he couldn't physically do more. So it left him to read and learn the technical side of the training materials, which he couldn't put into practice because he couldn't control his chakra. He was stuck in this cycle. The only plus side this time was that Hokushin was still in the air, exactly where his chakra blasted towards. While he couldn't see it anymore, his chakra pushed up the wind, sending the smug bastard crashing into some bushes. A loud crash and cracking of branches followed. He laughed at the sight. The only sense of accomplishment he's had all week. That's it. I'm done training with you. The smug bastard shouted. He kicked himself up, brushing away all the broken branches and leaves that stuck to him. If you can't control your chakra, then I'm done training with you. He snubbed his head, trying to look down on him. Sazanami just scoffed. Big words in turn, San. Seems I should tell Naruto that you're not being helpful. He's big on helping each other train. Hokushin flinched, his face not hiding any form of unhappiness he felt at that threat. He walked over and picked up his sword. Well, I've given all the advice I can give on your problem. Sparring isn't going to help. Maybe you should actually ask the young master to see if he can find a solution instead of dragging your feet. Watching him walk off back to camp, Sazanami was finding it harder and harder to disagree with that option. His last option, in fact. He didn't want to ask Naruto about this, preferring to use any other means to solve it. Sure, pride was an issue, especially given the difference in their ages. But he was beginning to see how hard it was to stick to that given all that's happened. No, the more crucial one was responsibility. He didn't want to saddle Naruto with more work than he already had. Right now he had one of his clones watching over Menma and Sasami, doing that water walking exercise that supposedly should be helping with his control problem. The two had already got the hang of it and were walking around like pros. Now it was just seeing how long they could do it with a simple game of tag. More playing than training at this point. It was nice to see the three of them have fun. They were kids after all. That's what they should be doing. Not Naruto though. While he may have duped Menma and Sasami, he already knew the real Naruto was off doing his own private training. Really intensive training. Not that he was trying to be sneaky, it was more that the two didn't take kindly to Naruto's more dangerous and experimental exercises. So while a clone played around, the kid was straining himself trying to grow stronger for all their sakes. Sazanami sighed. I guess I really don't have a choice. He had already sought help from Menma and Sasami, the former of whom even used that empowering music jutsu again to see if he could get a better grasp of his chakra. No such luck. Sasami was more technical in her knowledge. He got a better understanding of chakra from her. Sadly, the practical aspects didn't stick with him, as his one-shot attack was proof of that. So he was walking through the small trail towards a waterfall the kid was currently using for his training. It was very isolated within the small valleys that stretched for hundreds of miles within the land of rivers, giving them a perfect chance to take things easy without having to worry about anyone who would pursue them. After the incident in the land of birds, there were a multitude of rumors that spread. A monster attacking the capital and the name Naruto Uzumaki attached to its defeat. That was basically the sum of it. There would be solid movements from bounty hunters and others seeking to remove Naruto. So he would swallow his concerns. He needed to catch up with the others, then hopefully surpass them. For that race he needed to learn how to run without tiring himself out first. At the waterfall he saw Naruto standing in the river. For a moment he thought the kid was also practicing the water walking technique. It was stupid of him to assume Naruto would waste time on something like that. While he may have been standing in the river, the kid's shiny black closed-toed shoes were firmly standing on the riverbed. His right foot kicked out against the water. From the contact of the base of his shoe and the rushing water, there was no more movement. The water just stopped flowing. A small buildup of water formed around where the overhang was pouring down on. Naruto was stopping the flow of water with just his foot. Strange indeed. Never to do something halfway, Sazanami also noticed half a dozen clones off to the side. They were kneeling on the sparse patch of grass, all performing that strange meditation thing the kid always did. That had to be the weirdest thing of all. He did it every day, no matter the circumstances. Even in the rainstorm yesterday when they barely had enough cover for all 5 of them, so he sat out in the middle of the rain and did the routine for hours until it finally let up. Not even a sniffle or sign of some health issue afterwards. He wondered if someone like Naruto had ever caught a cold before. He doubted it. "Hey kid, do have a minute?" "Yup, 1 second. Naruto jumped out of the river, allowing the water to burst free. He shook his leg out, probably getting feeling back in it after holding it in place for a while. The kid waved him over to 2 flat top rocks over to the side. Seemed like a good chance to take a breather as well. He complied with the gesture. "So what's up?" He didn't sugarcoat. "I need help with my chakra." That was it, plain and simple. Naruto nodded. "Yes, Sasami-chan told me. Even saw you practice a few days ago." Sazanami sighed, scratching his chin to hide his irritation. It wasn't exactly what he wanted to hear. He would rather not be checked up on like he was vulnerable or in need of protection. Even without using chakra, he was still a skilled swordsman. "I've exhausted my options here. Until we get to the next hideout, I'm sorta left high and dry. The others told me my problem is with my chakra control. I can't gather and release a certain amount at will. It seems I just push most of it out in one go. All those control exercises, ugh, I can't even do it while meditating." He grit his teeth, slightly bitter at this fact. "Without control, all the techniques in those scrolls are useless to me." The kid looked at him for several moments, not saying a word or moving whatsoever. Hell, he wasn't even sporting a smirk or a sly grin like he normally did. Been like this for the past few days actually. More quiet and distant. That was more than a little off-putting. "Well, you don't need to feel frustrated because I know what your problem is," he stated matter-of-factly. "Oh really? So what is it?" "Your mind, spirit, and body aren't unified." Huh. Sazanami was completely lost. The words not matching up with the lesson of chakra Sasami gave him. It was supposed to be the culmination of one's physical and spiritual energies. The gist being that mental stuff counted towards the spiritual energy. Before we get into that, I'm curious. Are you wearing a chakra band? Chakra band? You mean that ninja tool that's used to help you train physically? Yeah. He opened up his robe, revealing the black band wrapped around his waist. There had been 5 of them stored in that scroll, but he only managed to get 1 on. Even then he felt strange. The thing began to feel heavy and really exhausted him fast. Putting a second one on wasn't really an option. Resting his chin against his fist, Naruto gave him an incredulous look. "Train physically? That's only half of what it does. I'm assuming you don't know how it works." Shaking his head, the kid laid it out very clearly. "That band takes in roughly half your chakra and then doubles your weight." Sazanami blinked thrice before flipping out. "You mean I could have been training longer if I didn't wear this?" Seeing his stupid mistake now, he didn't hesitate and started to pull it off. He couldn't waste time now. Not for something like this. Only from Naruto's hand grasping his wrist did he stop. "Whoa, hold on. You actually did the smart thing by wearing it. The more chakra you have makes it more difficult to control. You can't even control the chakra you have now, so at least you've gotten some decent physical training while wearing it. I would recommend only taking it off when you rest or during a fight." Relaxing slightly at his blunder actually being a blessing in disguise, it made him curious. "Do you wear these things too?" "Nope, I have something a little different. I'm sure you noticed the rope-like marking around my body? They do the same thing as the bands basically. Just more convenient since I only need to use a hand seal instead." So that's what they were, Sazanami mused. He had been curious about them since he saw them after his battle with Hokage. Now recalling those times when the kid had most likely released the weight before a fight. "Fine, I'll leave on then. So what's all this about my mind, spirit, and body not being connected or unified?" Naruto corrected. "It's a bit complicated and something you'll need to sort out the most important part on your own." "What do I have to do?" "That's the complicated part. Well, more difficult than anything. You see, not long ago I had the same problems you faced. Maybe not to the same degree, but unlike you Sazanami, the rest of us were trained to consciously manipulate chakra from an early age. I, myself, had the most difficulty of all. One of my worst skills. In fact, I was the worst in my class. Probably in the entire Leaf Village. Sazanami actually looked a bit surprised to hear that. Saying Naruto was the worst would imply everyone else he trained with were some sort of godly super beings. He seriously doubted it was the case. Still, he was hard to visualize. I struggled to control my chakra, couldn't concentrate to save my life, little to no patience, and certainly didn't like to read. Naruto breathed out a quiet laugh. I was really pathetic, thinking back on it. That means you were able to overcome those problems then? You're flaky kid Naruto, but in regards to ability and skill, well, I have yet to meet someone as good as you. It wasn't like him to praise so openly, but it was the truth. He was fearful of the day they actually did meet someone who could stop his leader. Naruto gave him a serious look. Not taking his praise very well. A very unimpressed look, if anything. Trust me, I'm nothing special compared to my grandpa and his friends. Not even close. However, he was able to impart upon me what it really took to gain control over my chakra. All without even training to control the chakra itself. The kid pointed to his clones. Tell me, what do you think my clones are doing? You said before they're meditating, but honestly they look like they're just pretending to eat, he stated flatly. Well, you're not wrong. They are eating. Ramen to be exact. While you may not realize it, this is the big secret. How I'm able to use my trumps cards and powerful techniques. How I was able to defeat Hokage. This exercise is the secret to my strength. If the kid didn't sound so serious, Sazanami would have thought this to be the most ridiculous thing in the entire world. How some bizarre meditation translated into godlike power raised so many questions it was hard to pick which to start with. So instead he would sit silently and hope whatever nonsense Naruto said next made some sort of sense. I don't focus on my chakra when I meditate. That's like running for the sake of running. No, what I focus on is a memory. One that was important in my past. Naruto explained, his tone much deeper and wistful than before. The kid's gaze was looking beyond him. His mind elsewhere. There was something about it that rubbed Sazanami the wrong way. Something that made him uncomfortable. Like a festering wound. Despite not knowing where the source of this discomfort came from, he unknowingly asked, a memory? No warning or any build-up. The kid dropped the bomb on his lap that rewrote everything he thought he knew about the boy. When you were a kid, did you ever go hungry? Sazanami felt like he was just punched in the stomach. Never. He was never rich or lived in luxury even as a child. His father was a bladesmith and died when he was 15. It had just been the two of them. While stern and disciplined, his father made sure he didn't go hungry nor went without shelter. They were close, but at the same time there was always a silent distance between them. Some things that the two of them couldn't share. Other than that, his childhood was normal as it got. Had friends, went to temple school, apprenticed under his father, went to festivals. Nothing that would deviate from any other children. Well, let's just say I hold a lot of gratitude to a ramen shop owner. I relive that moment over and over. Focusing on those warm feelings until I feel nothing else. Drawing my strength from it and channeling it when I concentrate. Naruto managed a small smile. He held out 3 fingers. With that strong emotion I strengthen my spirit. By focusing on a single moment I sharpen my mind's concentration. With acting out the physical motions of eating I make that moment tangible. These 3, mind, spirit, and body, forge me into something unstoppable. Things were slowly turning in Sazanami's mind. Naruto was different in a lot of ways. Much more than any ninja he encountered before. Maybe this was why he was stronger at such a young age. This strange exercise was starting to make sense. There was just one question that he needed to ask. If he was right, then he would have his answer, but would leave him stumped as to his next step. How does this affect my ability to use chakra? Why does this simple method make the difference? Simple? You make it sound like any of the was easy for me. Naruto scoffed. The long and hard answer is that my gratitude is my answer. It's who I am now and what defines me to my core. When I was facing down Hoki or when you were all in danger, I didn't feel fear or have doubts in my abilities. When my body ached from being ripped apart from my own power, I held true to a single bowl of ramen. Nothing else and nothing more. When I focus on my answer, that's all there is, no pain, fear, confusion, or self-doubt. Those are the enemies that plague one's use of chakra. When one has those problems, they weaken the spirit, they harm the mind, they disrupt the body. How can you control anything, let alone chakra, when those parts are out of your control? That is why all three are separate but connected. Individual parts of the same whole. Sazanami watched on as Naruto stood up. His clones vanished as he approached the water. Stepping out onto the water, he looked up at the roaring water hitting the rocks below. It wasn't a waterfall one would use for the cliché mediation training either. The amount would crush and easily sweep away anyone who tried. Naruto placed both hands at the precipice of the falls. He stood taking deep breaths with an almost eerie calm. When one can put everything else aside and focus all they are into a single moment, then power beyond power comes forth. Like the river, the massive waterfall stopped. The crashing water's flow began to halt as it was pushed back and cut by what seemed like an invisible wall. This wasn't anything out of the ordinary compared to the kid's other feats. Still damn impressive to prove a point. And prove it, it did. That was the problem. Even if he now knew the reason, finding the answer was now much harder to grasp. Sasami had said something similar to him before. He had nothing driving him now. Nothing to strive for or focus on. With Naruto's lecture, he also knew why he was failing. Doubts. Fear. Uncertainty. He wanted to get stronger quickly. So that he could step up next time. That was the crux of it. Since he didn't know when the other foot would drop, he was panicking and taking every failure too hard. Wondering whether he could even achieve a modicum of strength that Naruto possessed. His thoughts were interrupted when the water crashed down once again. Naruto held out his hand to him. "Hey Sazanami, can I see your sword for a minute?" Sure I guess," he answered, drawing out his blade and handing it over. He had never seen Naruto hold a sword before. The kid preferred shorter blades due to his up-close fighting style. That Kazuha he helped the kid make, it was something revolutionary. A close-range weapon that turned could be used for long-range targets. The closest he had seen before were black powder rifles that some palace guardsmen use. Loud, clunky, and took time to reload. With condensed air, Naruto had taken all the aspects of a rifle and condensed it into a weapon that could fit in his pocket. "It's heavier than I thought," Naruto muttered. "Let's see if I can do this." Holding the sword up, the hilt at eye level, chakra began to coat along the edge of the blade. The kid began to speak aloud, reciting everything like it was rote. "Only use as much as needed. Coat the edge gently and make it flow in one direction. Then on the culmination of the swing, release it all where the tip meets the quarry." Naruto brought the blade down at the 45-degree cut. The thin layer of chakra on the blade shot out in a thin stream. It sliced the ground for a few dozen meters before it hit a large boulder, much larger than himself. The top half slid off from the bottom as the diagonal cut made its way through. "That's the chakra wave technique." Sazanami gasped. That was the technique samurai used. What they were supposedly known best for. What he had been struggling to use since he started his training. Handing back his sword, the kid just shrugged. "My sensei explained it to me one time during a demonstration. That was with my normal chakra. Nothing special without wind applied to it." "Was your sensei a samurai?" "No, his, friend was. A real piece of work at that. Saw the guy use the same technique but cut an entire mountain in half." Naruto pointed to one in the distance. A massive one that reached above the clouds. The kid shivered, blanching as he revealed that fact. An entire mountain. He pondered the implications. If he could cut something that big in half, someone like Hoki would have gone down in an instant, regardless of the form he took. Sazanami really started to see the scope of Naruto's sensei. Those hidden bases and their techniques. The wealth and power he had. The scope of just how big the world was. It excited him. Now he just needed to find his answer. Something that spoke to him and helped to quell his doubts. An idea was slowly forming in the back of his mind. It was the execution that still eluded him. Alright, well, I'll leave you to it. My clone watching Sasami and Menma just dispelled, so I better get back before they chew me out for being sneaky. Naruto started to walk away, leaving him with one last question that needed to be answered. Hey kid. Your sensei's friend. The samurai, just how strong is he? Naruto stopped for a moment but didn't turn back. Well, as to how strong is, I have no idea. I know my sensei is probably the strongest man on the planet and his friend is the only person he considers his equal. That stuff you are using is most likely his. So I know it will help you. His equal, he resounded to himself. Smiling at those words, Sazanami couldn't help feel giddy as he watched Naruto's back disappear down the trail. I like the sound of that. If this was a sign of anything, then he would dare say it was one that didn't bode well. The land of rivers did in fact have lots of rivers. One big main one running down the middle with countless tributaries. It had been pleasant for the most part so far, even as they traversed the more rocky and narrow path leading through the mountains. Except that it rained nearly every day since they got here. The land of storms was expected. Being the home of the hidden rain village, he could understand. But it appeared like it followed them around like a stray dog. Not just some light drizzle either. Pouring rain with wind that threatened to knock them off the steep cliffs if they weren't careful. This was like false advertisement. Naruto swore when he was some international supervillain he would change all the countries' names to something accurate. Regardless of the horrible weather, there was something more weighing him down. He was certain Sazanami picked up on it, while Menma and Sasami had prodded him yesterday after coming back from training. Kind of strange having people who can pick up on your mood. It was strange enough when it was just Noriyuki. Except he was certain they weren't empathic. They assumed he was still upset about the events in the land of birds. A convenient cover. No, the problem was that in less than 24 hours he would be crossing the border of the land of fire. Sure, he originally felt pumped about having to cross through his home nation to reach the land of forests. It would basically be a cross sprint getting from one side to the other. Like a prisoner running through a town of police for no reason. Of course they could always try the long way around. But where was the fun in that? Naruto's goal was to get to the second hideout as soon as possible. By hell or high water. Which translated to, through Granny Tsunade or 10,000 Leaf Shinobi, respectively. Naruto sometimes wished his sensei taught him some shortcut on his ability to fly. Current skill level and wind style wasn't up to that level yet, sadly. Those concerns aside, his companions were not faring too great. This weather had significantly dropped morale. Naruto did like that their newest add-on was grinning through it trying to kiss his ass. It was sad and amusing at the same time. There was still a distance between Hokushin and the rest, but he was sure that would close soon. Noriyuki wasn't shy on hiring former enemies either, and Naruto had a sense there was something deeper about the guy. Naruto. Through the raging wind and rain he heard Menma call out his name. He turned to the sandy blonde to see he was pointing. Across the 200-meter drop chasm was another trail running along the mountainside. It was dark and the visibility was poor, but he could make out 3 figures on an adjacent trail along another mountain slightly greater than the distance of the drop below. The 3 were struggling, grasping the ledge for dear life. The wind pushed fast enough that they looked like they would be blown away. On top of that was the loose rocks that were sliding down the cliff face, all narrowly avoiding them by only a handful of meters. It didn't take a genius to tell they weren't ninjas and that they would be sent tumbling down into the raging river below to be swept away to who knows where. Naruto was lucky they couldn't hear him groan. Somehow, in the worst kind of visibility and over 200 meters away, Menma had spotted someone who clearly needed help. It was downright scary. Cursing his rotten luck and his better nature, Naruto took action. The gap was too far to get to even under decent conditions. Even with using wind style to propel a clone across, the technique would be swept up. The sides of the mountain were too slippery to walk on either. The rushing river down below even more so. Scanning ahead, there didn't seem to be any sort of crossing. Even if there was, it would take too long to get across then double back. He needed some way to make a bridge. Something quick and easy. The only thing around them were rocks. Staring up the face of the mountain, it didn't appear all that steep. The rock face itself was nothing sturdier than anything else he's cut before. It would just require a really decent blade. Sazunami, I need to borrow your sword. He shouted into the wind. Everyone else back up to a safe distance. I'll need the room. Follow my lead afterwards and stay close. The swordsman looked at him funny for a moment before having that look of realization. He handed the katana over to him. His sword demonstration yesterday had only been a one-off thing. Mainly curiosity of the technique he witnessed. Hirate, that crazy bastard, was someone he never wanted to see again. Everything about him rubbed Naruto the wrong way. Worse, that he was stupidly strong too. That was the only credit he would give the blade-swinging psycho. So Naruto would use this moment to show him up. Even if the guy was thousands of miles away. For that he would need a boost. 7 heavenly breaths, first breath of life. Activate. The sudden rush of power filled him as his muscles expanded. His body felt warm against the cold rain and the world around him came more into tune with his heightened focus. If his body could handle the stress, he would have opted to stay in this form all the time. Even after his training, his perception was still significantly greater than his physical reactions. It was a pain in the ass. He found himself alone with his thoughts more and the days seemed to drag on longer. He figures it would be the opposite after putting in decades of hours into meditation. Raising the blade high above his head, Naruto channeled wind chakra this time instead. Controlling his breathing to match the rhythm of his chakra's flow. He needed sharpness and precision to the nth degree if he wanted to pull this off. It may not be the length of an entire mountain, but he could still make a sizable cut. Heavenly Wind Blade. The beam of yellow-white chakra ran up the side of the mountain, cutting at an angle just when the tip and the base of the path lined up. With the heavy rain, it would make things easier. It pushed against the smoothly cut chunk of the cliff face. A loud rumbling shook everything as it slid down into the river below. Too heavy to be washed away and long enough to narrow the gap to the other side. Come on. He took the lead as he leapt onto the falling earth, letting its own downward momentum to carry them across. The upturned stone was drier than the surrounding metamorphic rock. He could feel Sasami grab onto his shoulder, trying to remain balanced while the rest stayed relatively balanced. When they got within jumping distance, Naruto made several clones. 2 for each of them. As a reference, he had the 2 clones behind him run through hand seals. This maneuver would be a little chancy but should work at this distance. Jumping up, his feet landed on his shadow clone's hands. Wind style, Gale Palm. He blasted over to the other trail, making a fair amount of distance with the clone's help. Landing just a little ahead of the 3 travelers, he turned back to make sure his friends made it safely. Sazunami made it just fine without his help, landing smoothly just beside him where he took back his sword. With his help, they were able to catch Sasami and Menma as they seemed to lack Sazunami's weight and center of balance. 4 of them were safely across. It just left the last member of their group. Hokushin. Nothing against the man. This certainly wasn't intentional. No matter how funny it was. The guy was 23 years old, roughly the same height as Sazunami, with a slightly smaller build. So how the hell was he lighter than Sasami? She was so small and tiny and cute that Naruto feared the wind would blow her away. Hokushin though? His shadow clones dispelled, so he knew how heavy he was. It was ridiculous how little the man weighed. Like, stupidly light. How does a grown-ass man weight less than a little girl? Did they not feed him in the watery? That was the only thing he could think of. Hokushin sword. Literally sword. Even with the deafening rainstorm, he could hear the churlish scream as he flailed in the air. They were all gaping with wonder and concern. He was like some kinda bird. The landing was anything but graceful. Hard not to be when you face plant on the side of a steep slope. A loud audible thud as an X-shape imprint crashes into the brittle rock. Thank goodness. Please. We need help. One of the travelers clutching the mountainside shouted out. They stood silently as Hokushin slowly slid down the slope, face down. Eventually making it down to the trail right in front of them. No one was sure if he was breathing. He was twitching a little, so he was probably alright. Probably, being a PT. Naruto bit down on his laugh, trying to put on his best smile. Sure, we'll get right on that. Gingerly placing a bandage over his nose, Hokushin shuddered at the pain. That was the last time he ever did something like that. As much as he wanted to complain, they were at least apologetic about it. Well, the orange-haired girl, Sasami, and the pretty boy, Menma, were at least. That ignorant swordsman laughed at his accident while the young master pointed at him, saying he needed to gain some weight. If it didn't hurt to cry right now, he would have done so at how sad his life was at this point. At least he didn't have to help carry one of those travelers. That was something he didn't quite get. Well, he understood but didn't see the point in it. Shinobi did things for their own self-benefit. Plain and simple. Whether they were part of some fancy village or just a lonely rogue, that was the underlying similarity that no one admitted. Ninjas work for wealth, power, and status. Cutting a piece of a mountain off, while impressive, seemed excessive to help three strangers. Doubly so when they nearly killed themselves doing it. Even a great and powerful shinobi like himself had to feel a bit strained by this recklessness. But he would endure because of that undeniable fact. Obviously. Of the three they saved, only one managed to remain conscious enough to direct them to a food shop nearby. A curry restaurant, to be specific. Right in the middle of nowhere too. A rest stop for travelers, no doubt, and the first sign of civilization since the land of birds. The building was battened down with planks around the doors and windows. Extra shutters for the debris being kicked up by the wind. Hello. Come you help us. The young master rapped his knuckles on the door. Luckily for them there was still a light on. It wasn't that late out, maybe a little past 8 o'clock. But one would figure that they would have reasonable hours given the bustling traffic. Even he couldn't scorn real shelter though. Anything to get out of this weather and to find a mirror to actually bandage his face properly. Yes, 1 minute, what can do dash. The door slid open, revealing a little old lady with round glasses. She wore a beige-colored hat, red neckerchief, and a blue apron. She appeared a bit surprised to see such a large group standing outside her shop. Then she eyed the men the young master and the swordsman carried. Like a switch she went from timid to forceful. Oh goodness. Bring them inside quickly. I have a room upstairs you can set them in. You all look like tired and cold. Shouldn't be out in this weather. Please come in and I'll make you dearies something warm. Pardon the intrusion, Granny, the young master said, dipping his head at the woman's generosity. They all followed suit, muttering a quiet thanks as they finally got out of the rain. They were given towels to dry off as they were led upstairs. An open room was laid out for them with 2 beds set up for the unconscious travelers. It was the third one of their group, a bald man with a black beard, that told them how they wound up in that circumstance. The man bowed his head to them. Thank you all. For a few moments I thought we would have fallen into the river or crushed by a rock slide. My name is Hokage, he gestured to his companions. These are my friends, Kanpeki and Sanguro. Pretty dangerous to be traveling in that weather, don't ya think? The swordsman said. Yes, you see the situation we're in is dire and we need to dash. Whoa. Hold on just a moment. The young master blurted out, even placing his hand on the man's mouth. Everyone looked at Naruto as he turned around to them. The blonde pointing at him. Hokushin, cover Menma's ears. Don't want to take any chances this time. A bit lost but not questioning it, he complied. Menma, who had been the most open and friendly of the group towards him, was not in a favorable position within the young master's eyes. Not long after leaving the land of birds they realized the taller blonde had given most of their money away to those in need after his former master's attack on the capital. What followed was the young master chewing Menma out, so to speak. Not that it lasted very long when the taller blonde started whimpering and saying how sad the people in the land of birds had been. Naruto folded. Muttering something about never letting Menma near money ever again. While grateful for the inclusion from the musical ninja, he would try his best to keep some distance lest they also put him in a bad position with the young master. Naruto-kun isn't that a bit? You're absolutely right, Sasami-chan. He can probably read lips too. Sazaname covers his eyes. Good thinking, kid. Now that Menma's eyes and ears were covered, much to the boy's discomfort, the young master spun back around. My apologies for that. Managerial issues. Please, continue. Well, as I was saying, my friends and I come from the Kotabami gold mine not far from here. Things were going great until 6 months ago. A group of thugs and criminals appeared and forcibly took over the mine and everyone who works there. A group calling themselves the Kurosuki Family. Hokushin's eyes widened. Kurosuki. He was familiar with the name. Rather, as he was formerly part of a wandering clan, they collected intel on a lot of famous shinobi. Typically because they held jutsu worth stealing. Not just from small and weak villages either, all the major hidden villages and their top shinobi, loyal or not. In this case it pertained to an infamous ninja from the Hidden Mist. A veteran of the Third Shinobi World War to boot. There were some wild rumors that circulated that he died actually to some leaf genin of all things. No one believed a word of it, but that's what was spoken for a time. What truly mattered was whether this was indeed the same man. The young master had pulled out a small black book from his vest, flipping to a specific page. Whatever he was looking for, he seemed to have found it. Holding it out for the others to see while pointing to a spot on the page. The swordsman's face went rigid while Sasami looked a little pensive. Something on the book had rattled them. Something he would need to find out later. Right now the only issue was the look on the young master's face, a dastardly grin. Something that still haunted him after that interrogation. He blanched, recalling the experience. So you were trying to get away to find help, right? Hokage bobbed his head. Yes, we slipped away during a funeral to reach the Hidden Leaf Village. A funeral? The swordsman asked. The look on the miner's face took on an almost sickly green. The man clutched his knees, digging his nails into his skin. The Kurosuki family, when someone steps out of line or when their leader just feels like it, he'll hold a funeral. Except they bury that person alive. Then their leader weeps and cries over them like he lost a dear friend. Silence. Even for someone who's assassinated people in the past, burying someone alive, it just didn't have any appeal to him. Quick, decisive, and efficient. Such a method was for the sake of instilling fear. Pushing on common phobias like tight spaces and premature death. Not a method for a shinobi, but definitely one for a thug. Crying over people he buried alive? The man's clearly lost his mind. Feet up or down? The young master blurted out before everyone found the nerve to speak. Feet up or down? I'm sorry? I don't understand what you're saying. Never mind, just thinking of something else. Not important. Naruto waved his hand at his outburst, clearing his throat. Anyway, your plan is to go to the Leaf Village to hire shinobi to deal with this, correct? Yes, once Rokusuke and Sanguro are well. The sooner we reach the village, the sooner we can bring help back with us. The young master stood up, rubbing his hands together. No need. You're in luck, we'll take on that job and clear these thugs out for you. Wait, you're all Leaf shinobi? The miner asked disbelievingly. Better, the young master chirped, we're Sand shinobi. Hokushin heard the swordsman groan. Muttering under his breath, back to this again are we? Taking the young master's hands, the miner bowed his head. Please, if you can help get rid of them, then we would be eternally grateful. Yeah, since you're hiring us, I'll tell you the cost up front. There was a strange grin on the young master's face. Even tipping his hat low, hiding his eyes. With a deeper voice and snap of his fingers, he said something right out of a storybook, our weight in gold. To the miner's credit, the amount didn't seem to faze him. Hokushin was sure the man was just more used to measurements by kilograms or just about any other known unit of measurement. It was cheesy just hearing the words spoke so, peculiar to a serious situation involving bandits that were mercilessly burying people alive. Didn't matter to the miner though. He just smiled and nodded. It will take time afterwards to get it processed, but that shouldn't be a problem. The local officials have given up this place already, so all the gold we've collected since 6 months ago has gone to the Kurosuke family. Giving you that amount will be the least we can do. Excellent. Now I think I can smell the curry downstairs. The young master cheered. Let's go strategize for tomorrow, everyone. Hokushin let go of Menma's ears now that this impromptu negotiation was over. While there seemed to be more than just simply gold on the line from that earlier interaction with the Black Book, it wasn't a bad deal all other things considered. That amount of gold could set them up for a long time. Long enough to. Well, he wasn't really sure since he hadn't been told anything about their goals. Something to do for later. Right now he needed to be sure if his hunch was right. Tell me something? What's the name of the Kurosuki family's leader? It's Reiga. Reiga Kurosuki. He flinched. Even knowing there was a chance didn't stop him from being surprised. Even the Watari were hesitant to go up against the members of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. Legendary ninjas are gifted in their skill with ninjutsu and kenjutsu. Said to be the experts in assassination and killing any foes who get in their way. Many of them have been gone rogue since the civil war within the Land of Water, or so the rumors say. This fight would not be easy if they were up against Reiga. With Naruto Uzumaki though? After what he witnessed the young boy do. His overwhelming power. Perhaps Reiga was in for a surprise this time. Hokushin smiled at the thought. The respect and infamy they could gain for killing him. It sounded like a good bonus on top of the gold. Guys? So what are we doing? Menma asked as he followed after the others. Oh man, this looks awesome. Thanks, Granny. Oh, it's my pleasure, dearie, and please everyone calls me Grandma Sancho. There's plenty more when you're done. The old lady pinched Naruto's cheek affectionately. A bit surreal that it didn't look like it even fazed the kid as he was too busy slurping down his plate of curry. This is great. I'm definitely getting seconds and probably thirds. Naruto then looked up to the rest of them. In fact, we'll all eat at least 3 bowls. A warm meal was appreciated after trekking half a day through a storm. While the curry was definitely good, the portions were a bit too generous. While their money supply had been dwindling, they had a lot of food provisions thanks to Princess Toki. Most of it was just grain and dried bird meat, but it would last them until they reached a real city. So in order to eat 3 portions was a bit. Naruto-kun, I don't think I can eat that much, Sasami voiced what he and everyone else was thinking. It's not eating, Naruto corrected. It's extra money. Check it. The more we eat, the heavier we'll weigh. The more we weigh, the more gold we'll get after the job is done. Every pound means more money for ramen. He. Sazanami didn't know what was worse, the inane logic behind their leader's order, the fact Naruto sounded like he was the most clever person in the world right now, or that this gorging on curry was so that he could stuff himself with ramen later. Perhaps it was the mixture of all 3 that really got to them. That and they were so tired and exhausted from traveling they needed the break. Ha 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 ha. They all laughed. Laughed until their sides hurt. It was even worse as Naruto sat there with curry sauce on the corner of his lip, looking so innocently at the rest of them like he didn't get the joke. Sometimes he wondered how the boy came up with very intricate strategies when he seemed so clueless sometimes. He was starting to think Naruto had some switch in his brain. That or he was bipolar. Realizing that was a whole other issue, one he wasn't even remotely qualified to deal with, he moved on to the topic at hand. So ninja swordsman, huh? There were 2 pieces of information that stuck to him the moment the words left the intern's mouth. He was aware that ninja also used swords, although in a much different context, mainly purpose, than samurai, but he never thought there was a group of ninja that were considered swordsmen. Supposedly, they were famous for it too. He had questioned why he had never heard of them. At least until he found out they originated from the Land of Water. Over 1,000 miles from the nations in the Great Divide. While interesting to know that there may be other swords skills in which to learn, the biggest piece of information that shook him was the swords themselves. Actual swords with abilities that sounded so far-fetched to be real. Swords that could store or steal other chakra, others that could cause explosions upon impact. It was a far stretch from simply taking ore to smelt, shape and form into a blade. Yet it excited him. The very idea of it lifted something in him. Something he thought long gone since that fateful night 5 years ago. Mainly questions that turned around in his mind as to how such weapons were made. What metal did they use? What temperature was the forge raised to? How many folds were done as they worked the metal? On and on it went in his thoughts that he knew he wanted to see this swordsman firsthand. They are dangerous, the intern claimed. Do you think you can beat him, young master? Naruto, to his credit, actually looked serious about that question. Yet, he appeared a bit rattled too. Like it was more than just fighting the man. That look was similar to the one he had seen the kid show these past few days. He could see the spoon in Naruto's hand bend as he was unknowingly applying too much strength to his grip. Yeah, I think so. I have some experience dealing with them. This will actually be the third swordsman I've encountered in the past year. They are not easy opponents to handle. Those swords they use are tricky to deal with. You've encountered them before, young master. Which ones? Yeah, the last one I encountered was that fish freak Kisame. That sword of his stole my chakra away to keep me from using jutsu. Kisame Hashigaki, the monster of the hidden mist. Wielder of the sword shark skin, Samahata. His infamy has reached the point where people call him a tailed beast. Hokushin rattled off like he was giving a school report. I'm surprised you managed to survive against someone so dangerous. I wouldn't have without Pervy Sage to save my butt. Way in over my head back then. It's a good thing Master Jiraiya was there for you, Naruto-kun. Even I have heard he's as strong as the Sannin. Sasami said. The intern's smug look actually morphed into one of surprise. Wait, you mean Jiraiya of the Sannin? You know him as well. Master Jiraiya was Naruto-kun's teacher. The intern dropped his spoon. He stared at Naruto like a gaping fish. Like what he just heard was the most mind-shattering thing he had ever heard. You're a student of Jiraiya of the Sannin. That explains a lot. Now things are starting to make sense. This big eureka moment was quickly dashed, however. Less sense than you think. He only taught me 2 techniques, one of which I can't use anymore. Anyway, the more important member of the ninja swordsmen had to have been Zabuza. He was the first swordsman I met. Zabuza Mamakai? I heard he was killed not long ago by Kakashi the copy ninja in the Dash Land of Waves. Yeah, I know. I was there. He was my Jonin instructor for my squad. This was back when I was still a bright-eyed genin of the Leaf Village all those, 8 months ago. It was our Dash. You were instructed by Kakashi the copy ninja. The intern interrupted. Naruto groaned. Shoving his spoon into his curry and scooping up a large portion. He then shoved it into Hokushin's mouth. The former Watari member sputtered and coughed as he choked on the food caught in his throat. Before Hokushin could grab any water, Naruto grabbed that too, hucking the water on the floor. Again, not important. Now shut up and let me finish. Naruto continued even as Hokushin ran into the kitchen, nearly pushing Grandma Sancho away to drink from the tap. It was our team's first C-rank mission. Our first real mission outside the village. We were tasked to protect a bridge builder who requested us to protect him while he traveled back to his home in the Land of Waves. Things didn't turn out as we expected. Throughout the meal, Naruto told them in detail what had occurred between his team. How things quickly went south soon after leaving the village. It never ceased to amaze Sazanami how easily shinobi were so keen on sending children into situations like that. It clearly had an effect on them. More so than it would on an adult. Naruto clearly took it as a major milestone that changed how he viewed strength. And from the one who told him it, the raw emotion from the tale was palpable. Haku, a young boy who was used because of his gifts. His thoughts on himself being nothing but a tool to be used. The user, Zabuza, demon of the mist, and his sudden change of heart at the end of his life. It kind of reminded him of their struggles in the land of birds. While the objective was accomplished, it felt hollow. Now it appeared they were about to enter another mess. This time we won't fail, he swore to himself, gripping his sword. He would use this opportunity to see firsthand the power of a ninja swordsman. So in turn, what's so special about this Raga's Felis blade? Grumbling as he downed another glass of water, he gave a curt and poignant answer. If he really is Raga Kurosuke, then he should still possess the twin fangs, also known as the Kiba blades. Twin swords? Menma questioned from the kitchen. He was helping Grandma Sancho clean up. What do they do? Supposedly they can enhance the user's lightning style. Excellent. Perhaps this won't be as hard as we thought. He 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 he. Naruto grinned wolfishly. He twirled his Kazuchika in his fingers. The blade attached to the end had a faint white glow. The wind chakra the kid normally used. I wonder which weapon is stronger? Probably mine, no doubt. Sazanami shook his head. Kid, I doubt some weapon I threw together with leftover scrap would stand up to a master-crafted sword that can control lightning. While Naruto himself may make up the difference with those special auras, he didn't want him to keep relying on them. If they really did strain Naruto's body, then using those powers sparingly was for the best. They needed to pick up the slack for Naruto's sake. Ha! You really are an ignoramus Ronin, Hokushin mocked. It doesn't matter the weapon's quality in this case. The young master's wind style is superior to Reiga's lightning. Even with a legendary blade, I doubt it could withstand someone who uses advanced wind style. As much as he wanted to jab back at the intern's jeering, Sasami corroborated that claim. He's right, Sazanami. Wind acts as a natural insulator against lightning. Each of the 5 elemental chakra natures is strong against one of the others. She even took it a step further, drawing out a circle for him to see. He had barely got into chakra itself, now there were different categories. Just more he needed to wrap his head around. Sazanami huffed. Well, regardless, we should go check it out tomorrow. Let's make the party quick, yeah kid. Absolutely. Once we see what's going on, we can cross the Kurosuki family off for good, and the people in these parts won't need to fear being buried alive. Indeed, young master. Perhaps the people at the Kotabami gold mine will appreciate burying those toothless thugs instead. Shatter. They all jumped when the sound of a plate shattering tore into their ears. All eyes darted to the origin, the kitchen, where Grandma Sancho stood looking at them. She was distraught to say the least. Even to the point where she was shaking. Barely hidden in the corner of her eyes were burgeoning tears. Menma knelt beside her, grabbing her shoulder, keeping her from falling over. Grandma Sancho? Are you all right? It's my fault. My son. He joined the Kurosuki family because of me. Emptiness. Yes, that was what he was feeling right now. So much emptiness. The wounds on his heart festered thinking about how 3 of his dear villagers fled. Without reason or warning, they just took off. Like they didn't care. His heart. It truly was aching. How could he remember them properly? How could he remember the good times they shared if they weren't here? How could he perform a funeral for them? Reiga. Yes, Ranmaru. He replied through his tears. I sense something, the 3 that left aren't far, but... Not far. Not far. Oh, joyous days. A smile tugged at his lips. Yes, perhaps it was too soon to weep for his loss. All those good memories they shared. Those times of bliss. They would be cherished. A funeral for all of them. What great times are ahead. Reiga, we need to run away. So wound up in his emotions that he barely registered the words. Even he had to take a moment to really comprehend what was said so that he could grasp the situation. Ranmaru never lied. Was never wrong. He always knew what was happening. He was a good boy. He was Reiga's eyes, and as such he would never doubt his own eyes. Such a thing would be crazy. Incomprehensible. But to just pack up and leave? After holding this town in mind for so long? Getting to know the villagers and protecting them from those corrupt politicians? After so many funerals? He couldn't. Who? Who are they, Ranmaru? I don't know, he whispered. Ranmaru was trembling. Shaking. Like he was afraid. That had never happened before. Ranmaru was never afraid. Not even death. There are 5 of them. One of them is powerful, I can feel him. His presence is so strong it's like he's right in front of us. Interesting. Perhaps he's someone worthy of a funeral. Yes, it sounds like I could feel something to remember him. Reiga, I don't know how to describe it. He feels like the Mizukage, yet somehow worse. That actually made Reiga snap to attention. The reason why they could no longer stay in the land of mist was because of that demon. He had no problem with their blood-crazed leader until he started cracking down on those with Kekai Genkai. That too hadn't been an issue for him until he met Ranmaru. If the Mist had known he was harboring him, then they both would have been killed. For that reason among others was why he discarded his old home. Now they were up against someone like the Mizukage? That only meant one thing, Jinchuriki. Which village though? The Land of Rivers was poorly located within multiple powerful players. The hidden stone, leaf, sand, and waterfall all had Jinchuriki that were used as blunt instruments. He doubted it was someone from his own village, as Ranmaru would have been able to sense it. Whoever they were didn't matter. He wouldn't flee from this place. So many people he had come to know. So many funerals that he needed to attend. Whatever power they held wouldn't matter here. This was his territory and these were his people. Don't worry, Ranmaru. You and I are one. Together no one can stop us. He felt his other half shift. A soft and gentle laugh escaping his lips. Yes. Together no matter what. Let me go. Let me go right now. I need to go save Kanpeki. This had been all they heard after the other two miners woke up. One of them, a thin and small man named Rokusuke, went ballistic after he found out they were going to stop the Kurosuki family, saying they needed to go rescue his friend that had been buried alive. He had tried to barge his way out, ready to back and dig his friend out with his bare hands if needed. Naruto was starting to think all his clients were insane. His rantings only got worse when they physically tried to stop him from going, telling him to remain at Grandma Sancho's shop. It didn't take long for Sazunami to take things into his own hands. Using the back of his hilt, he slammed it into Rokusuke's stomach. He dropped like a stone, trying to catch his breath. Don't you think that's a bit much? Hokage said, kneeling over his friend. Sazunami didn't bat an eye. Didn't seem like he had much patience at the moment. Sorry, but no. We had a string of bad luck recently about clients that didn't have the sense to stay away from danger. They got killed because of it. He's better unconscious and alive than dying like a fool. Besides, from what you told me, his friend was buried over 2 days ago. I don't need to tell you how risky it is for him to run back into enemy territory to dig someone up who's already dead. Naruto wasn't trying to sound cruel. It was just a point of fact. If Rokusuke was angry with them afterwards, then he was free to do so as long as he wanted. They weren't heroes here. They would stop the bad guy and that was it. Whether they were liked didn't matter. That was Noriyuki's second lesson. Naruto placed a hand on the man's shoulder. I am sorry about your friends. After this is done, you'll be able to exhume their bodies and give them a proper goodbye. Give closure to their families. Yes, you're right, he said glumly. All right, let's head out, Naruto ordered. They were already set to go. The sun just came up, so chances were they could get a good measure of what they were dealing with. He didn't have any convoluted plan this time. They had already established themselves in the area, so they didn't need to hide. Plus, they had been here several months already without any response from the Land of Rivers government, so it also meant they were confident no one was going to come and deal with them. That made the plan very straightforward. Go in, take care of the Kurosuki family and get out. Plain and simple. Simple solutions. Noriyuki's first lesson. Please be careful, everyone, Grandma Sancho called out to them. Don't worry, we will be back later, Menma assured her. With Karashi, safe and sound. Yes, that was a little addition to our mission. Grandma Sancho begged them to make sure her son Karashi was alright. She showed them a picture of him and how she pushed him to be tougher. Now she blamed herself for him joining the Kurosuki family. She assured them he was a good person who was in over his head. It was a heartfelt request from a mother looking out for her son. Very heartwarming and all that. Since she had been good to them, they wound up promising to make sure he was alright. Naruto also promised himself to glue blinders and earplugs onto Menma's head. Their way towards the Kotabami gold mine wasn't a long one. Less than an hour from the shop was the small mountain range where the mine was located. The terrain was mainly rocky with a sparse number of trees. The range also felt a little warm and dry compared to the surrounding areas. Weird when it had poured cats and dogs the last week. When they reached a good spot with a vantage point overlooking the mine itself, they gained a better idea of what was happening. Outside the mine, which was a large dugout in the mountainside, were several wooden buildings. A small town where the villagers resided. At the furthest end was a larger building, much nicer than the rest. The Kurosuki family's base was, no doubt. The goons in question were scattered amongst the works, all dressed in black cloaks with long hoods. They watched as the villagers dragged heavy bundles of rock and other materials out of the mine. A look of fear on their faces were clear as day. The reason was shockingly clear. Not far off was a makeshift cemetery. All the graves were poorly marked with a piece of metal hastily sticking out of the ground. Graves that looked recently dug out. The threat of being buried alive was all too present. This all paled to something else though. Naruto couldn't put a face to this feeling. Actual emotions that he could feel. It was like they were being watched. It wasn't coming from down below. No, it was from somewhere along the adjacent cliffs. Yet, he couldn't see anything. Not that it really mattered at the moment. Everyone, follow my lead. Right. Of course, young master. They swaggered down the trail towards the center of town. Many of the villagers stopped what they were doing as they approached. All looking more than a little exhausted from their indentured work. The fear was palpable. Their eyes avoided their own in fear of retribution from the Kurosuki family, no doubt. Halt. State your business. This is Kurosuki family turf. Bang. No warning given. No words shared. Naruto fired his Kazuha right in the guy's leg. The shot cracked like thunder as the echo carried across the gorge. If any of them didn't know, they were here before they did now. Just like Naruto wanted. He wanted them all to come here. If they held the mine, then their purpose for being in this town would vanish. If the Kurosuki family didn't know their intentions were to save everyone, then they couldn't take any of the villagers hostage. More likely to assume they were a rival gang trying to take over. A perfect, yet simple plan. Maybe even enough draw out the missed asshole himself. Everyone, we're under attack. One of them yelled. Several more started jumping out. All ditching their cloaks to reveal a uniform high-collar black ninja gear. Each with gloves that had retractable Hokage blades. Guys, clear them up quickly. I want to get this place secure as soon as possible. Naruto directed. He looked to Menma, who gave him a nod. His main duty would be to watch out for Karashi. The rest would make short work of these idiots. Even shorter than expected, as it turned out. Standing at the back, he could see Sazunami and Hokushin swiftly taking down any who got in their way. The swordsman was to be expected. His skills were by far superior than these idiots swiping blindly with their claw blades. Before they could even realize what was happening, several were knocked out. His sword technique looked a little different from before. A testament to going through those Kenjutsu scrolls that he brought along. Hokushin, he never really got a chance to see him fight before. Like in a real fight. He also used a katana like Sazunami, yet even Naruto could see it didn't suit him. Didn't really have the build. The guy was lankier and more agile like Menma. He swerved in and out of attacks using throwing weapons and his blade using a reverse grip. Effective but looked awkward. A shorter sword would probably be a better fit for him. Something to discuss later. Then came Sasami. His glossy-skinned princess. Only one word to describe her fight: vicious. That was all he could sum up. Oh sure, she looked damn cute doing it, so no one would say a word about the method themselves. She seemed to take his unorthodox training to levels that would make even Noriyuki cringe. The cute psycho threw Makebishi spikes all around her, making a sizable ring. For a moment Naruto thought it was just to keep the enemies from getting close. Create some distance for her shuriken. That assumption was quickly beaten to death, lit on fire and then mercilessly hucked off a cliff. As they leapt at her, trying to avoid the ground spikes, Sasami's blue square-shaped shield popped up as they were still full tilt. Slamming head first, literally, into the barrier. Their forward momentum carried and they landed hard on their backs, right onto the Makebishi spikes. It was harrowing to watch. He couldn't fathom how painful it was to experience it. A lot apparent, if their blood-curdling screams were any indication. This didn't affect her though. Naruto-kun, I did it. I beat them. She cheered so innocently with a smile so sweet it made his lips pucker. A cold bead of sweat rolled down the back of his neck. Why yeah, I'm proud of you, Sasami-chan. Altogether, the fight was quick. Barely 5 minutes. The idiots all laid out on the ground. None of them looked anything remotely like Karashi though. Naruto thought that the boy may have been someplace else or had moved on to some other town instead. The truth of the matter was just sadder than he thought. Menma had one lone member cornered. He was shaking like a leaf to the mild-mannered musician. The sandy blonde was holding his arms out trying to not appear dangerous. How he was anything but seemed mind-boggling. Menma looked as threatening as a sack of rice. Even then someone would actually think that a heavy sack could bludgeon someone. This was ridiculous. Grandma Sancho's son, who left to go prove he was strong and a real man, was hiding behind a tree. Naruto didn't think it was possible to facepalm so hard. I can't believe this cowardly boy is the one that the old curry chef wanted us to find. Hokushin said. Mom sent you? He asked before folding his arms and pouting like a child. I don't care if she did. I'm happy here as a member of the Kurosuki family. Our leader is a great man who took back the gold mine from those corrupt nobles. Naruto shifted his hat. It was strangely uncomfortable at the moment. Probably because he was feeling like a dad having to set his child straight. Listen, we're not here to force you to go back. She just said to make sure you didn't get hurt. You're physically old enough to make your own decision, I guess. Seeing as this little fool was still not meeting his eyes, Naruto grabbed him by his collar to spell it out clearly to this dense idiot. But whatever nonsense you've picked up from these lowlives won't matter after today. The Kurosuki family is finished. If you stick around still spouting how great they are, I won't lift a finger when the villagers try and bury you alive. Do you understand? Karashi's face turned a satisfying green. The message and threat being abundantly clear. Yes sir. I'll go back. Naruto dropped him on the ground now that this little issue had been dealt with. His attention now directed towards the source of that ominous feeling. It seemed like Reiga wasn't going to come face them. He smirked, readying his weapon. Time to see which was stronger. Hokushin could barely contain his excitement. Following the young master's lead, they made their way up towards Reiga's location. He didn't know how the boy knew, some sensing ability he assumed, but they were on the right track. The legendary mist swordsman was nearby, giving himself away spectacularly at that. The air was thick with mist, making it hard to see even a few feet in front. The hidden mist jutsu was a staple of the 7 ninja swordsmen and the hidden mist village as a whole. In fact, it was a jutsu he himself knew as well. His affinity with water made it an easy jutsu to learn. It just wasn't one he used often, as it could be seen as unnatural if the circumstances surrounding the target didn't allow it. A cloud of mist in a dry and rocky terrain like this? Hokushin scoffed. Clearly the young master wasn't amused either. Quit with the pointless bullshit already. I have better things to do than waiting for you to come out. Wind style, immense breakthrough. No match for the young master's superb skill with wind style, the mist all but vanished. Blown away with a powerful gust of wind, it revealed the caster easily. Standing on a ledge of another cliff just up ahead stood another figure in a black cloak. He appeared more threatening than the others. His body was more strange underneath the cloak too. If there was any doubt of his identity, it soon put to rest. Twin blades raised up into the air. Lightning streams radiating off the metal. The intensity quickly rose as a blast went soaring into the air. Fangs of lightning. From the clouds above, a blue flash roared down on them. None of them panicked though, merely dropping low as the young master raised his left hand in the air. A powerful surge of chakra emerging from his palm. Giant raisin shield. The blue disc covered them as the lightning attack barely made the young master jerk. The immense rotation acting to deflect and redirect the lightning in a circular motion, effectively dispersing it with ease. As the jutsu ended, the young master reseated his shield. Is that all you got? Reiga growled. You insolent cur. None of you deserve to have a funeral. You will be forgotten. Yeah, we'll see about that. Release. For a moment the young master glowed red as he strode forward at a casual pace, ignoring the mist swordsman ranting. Stay back you guys. It doesn't seem like he's in his right mind. I'll make this short. Sasami, be ready just in case he starts swinging wild. Of course Naruto-kun. As if to prove this fight to be already decided, Reiga slammed his swords into the ground. Lightning Burial, Banquet of Lightning. This time the ground acted as a conduit for Reiga's lightning racing towards them. Shaden Haki. Where they stood the jutsu didn't even touch them. The girl's barrier blocking the trails of lightning. She didn't seem to have as easy a time of it but didn't appear to have any problems keeping the attack at bay. How? How is my lightning not affecting you? Before it even reached them it passed by the young master. He didn't even flinch when the attack hit. Merely walked forward without a care. At the question he halted for a moment to raise his foot out. The answer being a very interesting development. Certainly a bad one for Reiga. No one seems to understand my Foshian, the boy muttered. Never realizing this outfit actually serves a purpose. While having steel-toed shoes makes it easier to keep one from, well, losing their toes. It also helps to have hard rubber soles. Now I'm not a scientist but I believe rubber is an inductor, no. Your shoes? That's the reason. Yup. Now I think it's time for you to actually show some real swordsmanship instead of hucking those puny sparks around. Or do they let anyone into the 7 swordsmen of the mist these days? In a strange turn of events Reiga actually laughed. Amused by the challenge. He jumped down to meet the young master in a duel. Both swords struck each other before he took a kenjutsu stance. One Hokushin was unfamiliar with. While the lightning still surged it was more narrow and focused. Covering the blades right up to Reiga's arms. It was what the hidden cloud ninja do. Increasing the penetrating power of the blades and electrocuting an opponent upon impact. The young master did the same. Holding his small cane-line weapon in a reverse grip. The blade strapped to the end glowed white with small gusts of wind forming around Naruto's arm. His other hand, open and free for him to use his chakra shield. Questioning my swordsmanship? Ha! Amusing brat. Reiga's barely hidden smile peeked out from his hood. Yes, I can see you clearly now. Your facing is burning into my heart. I think I can hold a funeral for you after all. Trust me, when I die I certainly won't be inviting you to my funeral. Certainly don't want some crazy old guy there, yeah no. Fine, I wouldn't shed a tear for you anyway. Rah. Blades clashed. Reiga had size and strength on his side but the young master was fending him off. With the bright white-blue light mixing together it was hard to tell what was happening in the clash. He was certain though that the lightning was being pushed back with the wind chakra Naruto was using. Holding the young master with one blade Reiga tried to gain an advantage by using the second to get under his guard. With the back of his hand, the young master formed another shield. It was smaller and more focused than before. Just enough to glance the blade away. Several more blows came in to follow up in hopes to break the technique but the chakra shield was solid. Rah! Just die already. Seeing that the strategy failed Reiga jumped back already charging another surge of lightning. Lightning ball. Wind style, wind blade. As expected the clash cancelled each other out. While the young master had the advantage in nature the difference made up by legendary Kiba blades brought them to par. It was amazing that someone so young could alter their chakra nature without hand signs. Any other wind style user wouldn't have been able to defeat Reiga in close quarters otherwise. Why doesn't Reiga just use water style? Menma asked. If lightning doesn't work then he should switch to his other affinity. The swordsman grunted. He can't. I doubt Reiga can use jutsu without those hand seals. He'll need to let go of his blades to do it. The kid is already faster than him. The moment he tries it the match is over. Begrudgingly, Hokushin had to admit that the analysis was spot on. It was the reason why taijutsu and byokaijutsu were prominent in a world where ninjutsu and genjutsu could do greater damage. The key is timing. Someone with a sword could cut someone faster than they could form hand signs. That's why only the most experienced ninjutsu practitioner could perform jutsu at greater speeds or with fewer hand seals. Or none at all in the young master's case. Normally that would be something to use to your advantage, but it didn't seem like that's what Naruto was doing. After several more swipes from his blade, his master made a strange move. He charged forward again, bringing his blade back in for another clash, putting himself in the same deadlock from earlier. What are you doing? You won't win like this. As long as I have both swords you can't attack in this position, Reiga taunted. We'll see. The next few seconds got a little confusing for Hokushin. The strategy, looking at it from this angle, it was certainly sound. In planning and execution. Reiga was even distracted and overconfident that he shouldn't have seen it. Young master's shoes clicked together. A hidden blade in the toe of his shoe. It was primed to cut Reiga's leg when he suddenly jumped back. This didn't seem to stop the young master as his weapon carried forward as Reiga jumped back. Naruto's hand twitched. The small trigger-like mechanism, one similar to a crossbow, was pulled. A loud cracking sound snapped from the weapon. He had seen it used before on his previous master. A fast projectile fired at close range. A surefire hit. Clang. At least until Reiga brought the flat side of his blades up to block the projectile, shattering upon impact. No way, Menma gasped. That's not possible. The swordsman shouted. Even the young master stared wide-eyed for a moment, trying to grasp what just happened. A state that Reiga was enjoying immensely. Ha ha ha. You can't defeat us. We are invincible. Soon you and all your friends will die. Ha ha dash. Because you avoided 2 of my attacks, you think you'll win. AHH. What? Why are you looking at me like that? What's wrong with you? The young master began to walk towards Reiga. Any sign of calm focus on his face was gone. In his hands another jutsu was forming. That spherical jutsu from before. The one known as the Rasengan. The one known as the Rasengan. Hokushin cursed himself for overlooking it. The young master was the student of Jiraiya of the Sunin, who was the master of the legendary 4th Hokage. A shinobi known especially for 2 jutsu, the Flying Raijin and the Rasengan. Compared to those 2, Reiga was a flea. An annoying insect. He never stood a chance from someone who was taught by an even greater shinobi. You didn't think I wasn't aware of your little duo? That I couldn't kick your ass anytime I wanted. Let's see just how you do without your little helper. A white Rasengan formed in his palm. Not to be used as an attack though. Just by holding it in his hand, the young master was pushing away the lightning jutsu so quickly that it couldn't form. The Kiba blades simmering out. Before Reiga could understand what was happening, another Naruto appeared out of thin air behind him. The clone's weapon was already cutting through the back of his cloak. From it was a small body bag. One used for transporting dead bodies, ironically enough. The bundle was flung over to them. The swordsman caught it before it hit the ground. No, Ranmaru. Give him back to me. Ranmaru. Sasami said. Not sure what was happening, they unzipped the body bag. Despite the ampheminate appearance, inside was clearly a boy. He couldn't have been older than 7 or 8. A frail thing too. He had trimmed, chin-length purple hair which is parted in the middle and red eyes that had a slight glow to them. A Kekai Genkai of some kind. It was just bizarre that Reiga was carrying a child on his back. Just laying there looking at them passively. You didn't think I couldn't hear him talking to you? Naruto scoffed. His clone gripped the mist swordman's arms, keeping him from moving. He struggled but couldn't break free from the young master. He's probably a censor of some kind, acting like a second set of eyes. Seems like you're overly reliant on him. Now let's see you get out of this, you crazy bastard. Naruto's white Rasengan blurred forward, slamming into Reiga's stomach. A blinding light followed. You're finished. Wind style, Rasengan. No. Ranmaru ya. Reiga's scream echoed for a few moments longer before he was engulfed in a white sphere. With one final push from his master, the mist swordsman blasted forward towards the edge of the cliff. He crashed through the rock and kept going down into the chasm below. No. Reiga. The boy cried out. In just a few moments the infamous Reiga Kurosuki was finished. Chilling. That was the only word to describe it. The only way Naruto could see the boy sitting in front of him. After they witnessed Reiga's body buried under a pile of rocks at the bottom of a steep cliff, he was certain the man was dead. They went back to the mine and made sure all the members of the Kurosuki family, sans Karashi, were subdued. It was a quick affair, with the villagers planning to hand them over to their government. After all that had happened, Naruto wouldn't have blamed them for some extreme and poetic justice. Seems like they had some shred of decency left. With that job done, they only had one issue left. Rather, one person to deal with, Ranmaru. The boy had done nothing to put up a fight or resist them as he was brought back to Grandma Sancho's place. They placed him on one of the cots as he didn't appear to have much strength to stand or walk for long periods of time. He had a hunch as to why that was. "Kid, if you hadn't told us that story about Zabuza earlier, I wouldn't have blinked twice at this. The similarities are uncanny. In just about every way. Guess the 7 swordsmen of the mist aren't all that different from each other." Yes, that was the caveat. Like a bad dream of his past he didn't want to relive. He never wanted Haku to die back then. How he thought himself disposable and only to be used by Zabuza had been painful. When Haku told him that he would become strong by protecting others, he strongly took that to heart. Yet, now he saw that Haku was wrong. Wrong about everything. Naruto wished Haku had the chance to meet Noriyuki before he died. It wasn't protecting others that made you strong. No, as his grandfather had stated, helping others is as natural as breathing. It's one's own answer and having no doubts about their path that made them truly strong. Haku had doubts and struggled with carrying out Zabuza's wishes. While he died protecting Zabuza, the end result was still the same. They both lost everything. Zabuza had been the same. Held all the weaknesses his sensei told him shinobi possessed. Truly the demon of the mist had lived in the shinobi world and only saw himself in that world. A delusion of his upbringing that only broke at the last moments of his life. Only then did he see the truth. Now before him was another boy who was so certain about how pointless his life was it hurt his ears to listen. That he was just a hollow existence that only held purpose in his own narrow point of view. That his ideals and thoughts on the world were so right they were the only truth that mattered. This is what lay before them. A child that looked at the world and saw nothing but what he shouldn't have. Naruto had been the same way. So clear on his morals of right and wrong that he was certain that sticking steadfast to his ideals would have brought him everything he wanted if he never gave up. Maybe he would have, but that wasn't the point. Wasn't even close to the reason why he had forsaken that path. No matter how difficult it was to do so. The reason was obvious to him now. It would have cost him more than he was willing to spend. "I'm not afraid," Ranmaru said emotionlessly. "My limbs are crippled and I can't resist. You can kill me so you don't need to hesitate. It's your mission, isn't it? I'm part of the Kurosuki family too." Sazanami, thankfully, almost predictably, kept his cool when the boy no older than 10 spoke those words. "How in the arg? How could you think dash? Kid, what sort of nonsense are you spouting? Of course we're not going to kill you. Or not." The swordsman was doing what Naruto referred to as anger pacing as his ranting about this spiraled into a flurry of jumbled yelling. Sazanami always did a poor job of hiding the fact that he didn't like the whole ideals of ninja. Children put into conflict? It always made his head spin. Not that Naruto disagreed with a lot of those ideals, it was just the world, shinobi, or otherwise, sometimes didn't allow for that. It wasn't right. Not by a long shot. So that's why he would become so strong he could change it. "That's right, we don't want to harm you," Menma assured. "In fact, we want to help you in any way we can. Then help me die. Life is too painful. Without Reiga I can't survive in this world. What meaning my life had is gone now if he and I aren't together." Sazanami was about to explode again before he raised his hand to stop him. In fact, he turned to all 4 of them and pointed to the corner, gesturing them to sit over there. Adding a finger over his lips to tell them to remain silent. They were about to witness the most frustrating thing his sensei had done to him. Never actually teaching him this skill but forcing him to pick it up. Like his sensei, he was going to break this incorrigible little child's entire worldviews in a matter of minutes. Just like his sensei did to him. Naruto extended his hand. I don't think we were actually introduced. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I was born and raised on ramen and grew up in the Hidden Leaf village. Recently I have started my own venture and struck out on my own. The little kid looked at him for several moments. The most flat stare he had even seen. With both his tiny hands he took his. They were cold and he shivered slightly, but it appeared Ranmaru was at least able to be reasoned with. You are so different from everyone else I have ever met. Naruto smiled. I'm certainly one of a kind. Something we share, I imagine. Especially those powers you have. I am curious though why you use them so often. They're the reason why your body isn't developed, aren't they? Ranmaru's eyes widened. What? My powers are the reason. Naruto's smile grew, seeing this wouldn't be as hard as he thought. Yes, you said those abilities that you've had since you could remember, right? The reason why those villages eventually shunned you after they found out? It's because of them you don't have much physical strength. How do you know that, young master? He didn't. Again, it was only a hunch on his part. But it seemed like the only thing that fit given the boy's specific Kekai Genkai. It's an ocular jutsu. The amount of chakra that's used to maintain it is quite large. Kakashi-sensei told me that once after he used it. Of course. Copy Ninja Kakashi Hatake possesses the Sharingan. Is that really why the boy can barely walk? Well, Kakashi-sensei's eye was transplanted, so it's more understandable, but Ranmaru here. If I understand correctly, you have been using your powers non-stop? You were cooped up in a little shed in the beginning, so you needed them to see outside. With Reiga you were encased in a body bag, so you also needed to use your powers to see what was around you as well. I bet the only time you ever stopped using your abilities was to sleep, right? Whether intended or not, the questions hit Ranmaru hard. He was shaking like a leaf. Not even meeting his eyes, as his theory was proving more and more correct. The truth of it was that Naruto knew a lot of people with eye-based jutsu. They never walked around using them as much as Ranmaru seemed to. The reason should have been obvious. Even to an experienced shinobi like Reiga. That brought up harsh truth number 2. I know this is tough to hear, but I guess you need to know. It's because of you that Reiga died. Naruto-kun. Sasami gasped, shocked by those harsh words. Kid. Why the hell would you say something like? Even Menma was trying to be condescending of him. Naruto, he is just a small child, I don't think you should dash. He turned around again. Glaring holes into their heads. His finger harshly placed over his lips to make them shush. It seemed like everyone was trying to interrupt him recently. Sadly, no food to shove into their mouths. I am the reason Reiga died. Ranmaru muttered. Yeah. You claimed you and he were one. Acted as one. I'm sorry, but anyway you slice it, you're two separate people. I was kind of disappointed with Reiga's strength and those legendary blades. There was no way Reiga was that weak when he was accepted as one of the 7 ninja swordsmen. He lacked the strength. I wasn't sure why until I heard you. During that fight I could hear you whisper all my attacks into his ear. You can't deny it, he had grown too overly reliant on you to the point he wouldn't act without you. His natural skills were dulled, Sazanami assessed. Now realizing what he was trying to tell the child. When you separated him from Reiga, the man went catatonic. Lost his focus and seemed like he actually lost his eyesight. That's right. You said yourself, you were his eyes and ears and he was your arms and legs. That's not how one person acts. In truth, you two were just band-aids for each other, except... Ranmaru looked up at him, tears pouring out of his eyes. Except he didn't need me. He was already strong. I became a crutch for him. Naruto looked at him with a mixture of pity and disappointment. Not fun crying when a person close to you dies, huh? Not just a stranger who you bury alive. No it isn't. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Despite Reiga's mind twisting away, I can tell he really cared for you. He did save you from dying, but he never truly showed you the world or experience what it has to offer. You say that living is painful, but I don't think you actually lived a day in your life. Naruto hooked his thumb over to his friends. You're talking to the wrong group of people on how hard life can be. So you're not going to find a single one among us who'll kill you because you find living difficult. We fight for the sake of life. Fight for the sake of life? Then what do I do? Am I really just a tool to sense things out? What's my life purpose? Good questions, he admitted. Naruto rubbed his chin, thoughtfully. A conversation he had with his grandfather drudged up. One that he didn't really consider until now. My sensei has always been a great lover of art. Sculpture specifically. He once said to me that the ones who struggle with life are those that think they are sculptures made out of stone. Carved as they should be or not at all. It's that they don't realize that all people are clay. Molded and sculpted by their environment and those around them. The secret is to sculpt it yourself. Naruto placed a hand on Ranmaru's head. If you have to listen to anything in your entire life, then make it this: never let anyone else decide what your life should be. Not me, and definitely not Rega. Be thankful for the gifts you are given and live freely to become the best version of yourself. You have potential unburdened by anything except your own doubts. Know that you will always find those who will stand by your side. Naruto-kun, do you mean? We can help him, Menma said adamantly. He sighed. That look Sasami and Menma gave him were dead giveaways. Another stray picked up for their merry little band. They knew full well what he was offering. He had done the same for each of them. Those sparkles in their eyes only made this more uncomfortable and susceptible to just scoop him up and keep him their own little mascot. He wouldn't fold so easily this time. Knowing full well where the source of their powers over him came from. Sasami was the cutest person on the planet. Menma was one of those accursed pretty boys and had a resting pity face. In truth, he wasn't actually making an offer. Not fully anyway. While Ranmaru was undoubtedly gifted in knowing what the cause of his health issues were, he would become stronger. But that would take time. As young as Naruto was, Ranmaru was even more so, on top of not being able to care for himself. He was better off staying here. Living a life away from ninja and death. So he would present the challenge. Ranmaru, Grandma Sancho has offered to take you in if you so desire it. As it turns out, Karishi was also adopted by her when his parents died in a mining accident. She has no issue raising you with the kindness and love you deserve. You can grow up and live a peaceful life. Naruto lifted his hand off. Grabbing the tip off his hat and looking Ranmaru dead in the eye. However, if you wish to become strong, even stronger than Rega was, then I can help guide you to that as well. There is one caveat to that offer though. Stronger than Rega? Really? What would I have to do? The little child looked at him like he just claimed he would make him God. It was a bit of manipulation, Naruto wouldn't deny that. His sensei had told him that he could become stronger than the Hokage. Surpassing our heroes and those we strive to be like is a good motivator to change. Naruto was more than certain Noriyuki would be the latter of the two. You need to tell me what your goal is. My goal? Yes, I know you barely have a grasp of what your purpose is, but that where you start. The difference between existing and thriving depends on what we want out of life. I'm sure you saw something while exploring the world with Rega that something caught your interest. Ranmaru frowned. I'm sorry, but I can't think of any. Don't feel down about it. We'll be around for a little while. You'll have until then to decide whether or not you want to come with us or not. If you're unsure about something, come talk to one of us. We all have life experience if you need advice. Just make sure the choice you make is something you want. With another thoughtful nod from Ranmaru, Naruto stood up and started walking downstairs. His friends were on his heels. Even as he ignored the calls from Grandma Sancho to eat something, he barely gave her a glance. They needed to hash this out somewhere without an audience. He knew what was going to happen. More specifically, who was going to grill him. Menma and Sasami were for this. The former of whom most likely felt a kinship with the small boy. Sasami would support his decision no matter what he chose. Even if it meant bringing someone as young as Ranmaru with them. They weren't the issue. Hokushin had remained silent and probably didn't care. Not like he took much stock in the intern yet. No, it was the eldest child. He could feel Sazanami's glare in the back of his head. Bracing himself for this, Naruto actually turned around to see the swordsman was livid. Only since that trial with Gosen Kyuji was he this angry. His reason was all too clear. But him blowing up so close to the Sancho's shop wouldn't help when Ranmaru could see and hear them with his special abilities. His hard gaze met Sazunami's stern one. They were both stubborn, so Naruto would make this very clear. The swordsman's personal view on this would be put to rest once and for all. Naruto would shut him down with a single order. Stop treating us like children. Sazunami stared at the black slop in front of him. Without a doubt this had to be the most intense and spicy curry he had ever eaten. Supposedly, it was their most famous dish at this shop and was even credited to saving someone's life. For a dish called the curry of life, he certainly felt close to death afterwards. They all tried, in fact. Even Ranmaru, God have mercy on the little guy. All of them except for their opportunistic leader dived for a glass of water. Naruto downed the plate and even asked for seconds. Not even a drop of sweat. The kid certainly didn't get hot or cold like he claimed. He sighed. That conversation 2 days ago was still running through his mind. It wasn't really a conversation. Just the kid putting his foot down on this debate. Sazunami didn't want to bring Ranmaru with them. He was even going to yell at the blonde, reminding him of the land of birds again. But was instantly told off for his views on the matter. Naruto knew what his stance was. It was ironic in a way, a child telling him not to treat him like one. Something you would expect from a kid throwing a tantrum. Wanting to seem more mature than they actually were. If it had been Menma or Sasami who said it, he would have shrugged it off. Naruto, though, his stare could paralyze him. Even knowing the kid would barely have to lift a finger to put him in his place. The message got through regardless of his personal feelings. Ranmaru had been through a lot. Believed his life was meaningless and was used by some insane shinobi. Now their leader was offering to take that same child with them. To expose him to the same dangers they are up against. Asking Ranmaru to decide a life path like it's so easy. He took another scoop of the black curry. Taking in a large portion in a single swallow. Using it to dull his feelings. It wasn't bad, all things considered. At first it felt like he was dying when he tried it. He guessed he just needed some time to adapt and then the intensity would begin to simmer. Sazunami wished life was like that too. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. Grandma Sancho chanted as she stirred another pot of curry. It was just her and him at the restaurant right now. Naruto had gone to the mine to make sure their reward was in order. Turns out he had no clue it took time to process ores to extract the gold. Luckily the Katabami gold mine had a lot of ore ready to be processed, so they would be heading out in another day or two. So the kid basically ordered them to eat as much as possible in order to weigh more. Opportunistic indeed. He hadn't a clue where the intern was. Vanished without a trace. Using that stupid camouflage technique. Sazunami had a hunch he was spying on Naruto. Trying to get into his good graces quickly. Not like it mattered with someone as flaky as Naruto. Sasami and Menma, training most likely. Working extra hard to become stronger. They hadn't said much about what happened earlier. They seemed like they wanted Ranmaru to join them. It was bad enough they were in this mess. Having to deal with all this. It made sense they didn't see the problem to add Ranmaru to the group if he asked. Why so down, dearie? Grandma Sancho asked. It's nothing much. I just feel so helpless right now. He admitted. Why? You seem like a capable young man with a hard work ethic. What else do you need? I wish I knew. I know I need to get stronger and I know how to get there, but I feel stuck? Uncertain. He shook his head, finding his own words to be confusing. I'm sorry if that doesn't make much sense. Grandma Sancho nodded, placing another bowl of curry in front of him. He was going to pass on it as he was already full, but she gave him a look that almost surprised him. Not towards him but at the curry itself. I made this ramen several nights ago. For the life of me I don't remember making it. You don't remember making it? While Karashi may not understand this, I have never felt ashamed of my profession. In fact, I always feel nothing but pride in my work. For decades I have put everything I had into making curry that could make anyone feel satisfied. To give them respite even if only for a short while. Oh, it's a bit cliché, I know, but that's not the full truth of why I've never stopped. Not the full truth? Sazanami asked. He felt strangely engrossed in Grandma Sancho's story. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up and his skin felt raw. No, the truth is I make curry for myself. It's been my partner since I was a little girl. I don't remember making this batch because I made it while I've been doing it in my sleep. My body knows every movement, every little nuance to my cooking that I don't need to think about it, these old bones just do it on their own. It only happens though when I feel stressed or worried about the future. When Karashi left I found myself with a fridge full of freshly made curry every morning that I don't remember making. It was like a form of meditation, he breathed in realization. Unconsciously making it to cope. Grandma Sancho laughed. Meditation? I'm not sure about that, but I guess you're right. It's how I cope with all the bad stuff in the world. I am grateful for the life I have. Never once have I regretted the years making and serving curry has given me. But you're young. I'm sure listening to an old woman prattle on won't help you. She turned back to the large pot and began her rhythmic stirring. Calling out the same numbers over and over. Sazanami was stunned. The similarities were frightening. Whether Grandma Sancho knew it or not, she was right. The answer he had been looking for was in front of him the entire time. After 5 years of wandering he had forgotten, truly forgotten that feeling of satisfaction and pride from his own craft. For years now his blade had been nothing but a means to survive. An invaluable tool for seeking justice against the man who framed him for murder. A sword used to mean something else to him. More than it did now. He couldn't help but laugh at how blind he had been. You know, ma'am, I don't think you give yourself enough credit. I think Ranmaru would be lucky to be raised by someone as wise as you. Certainly better than if he came with us. Huh? Well, I don't know about that. He certainly is a peaked little child, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. They may be young, but they have a fire in them that burns brightly. I just wish Karashi had that same drive to do something meaningful. Speaking of which, where is that pig-headed son of mine? I haven't seen him all morning. Strange. Now that I think about it, I haven't seen Ranmaru either, he realized. He was certain they weren't with the others. Scanning out of the window, dark clouds were spreading. It looked like a lightning storm was brewing. A knot in the pit of his stomach formed. No matter how unlikely the chance was, their luck in this job had been too great. Of course things would go bad the moment they let their guards down. He gripped his sword. I'll be back. If the others show up, tell them to meet me where Reiga fell. He shouted back as he ran out. As he got closer to the Katabami gold mine, the more the skies seemed to darken. The lightning cracking and lighting the skies like angry roars of a wild beast. His fears and instincts told him that this wasn't some natural storm. If he was right, then he needed to move quickly. On his right he heard footsteps moving alongside him. A quick glance showed the intern on his heels, which a cocky smirk. So it appears he wasn't following Naruto around. It was him. Sazanami didn't find it comforting that this two-faced idiot was keeping tabs on him. Let alone following him now. What do you want? Why, the same thing as you, obviously. The boy is an interest of the master, so of course I will be there to make sure he is returned safely. So he was trying to suck up. Oh? Just master now? Not calling him young anymore, I see. Well, it turns out master doesn't like being referred to or treated as a child. He jabbed, trying to twist the knife of his earlier blunder. I would never do anything to insult a person of his magnificent stature. Sazanami snorted. I guess when you do nothing but kiss his feet, his stature appears quite large. Mock me all you want, but soon enough I'll be the master's right hand while you'll just be as his lackey for menial tasks. With that, the lanky assassin started running faster, moving ahead of him to try and reach the area where Reiga was crushed by boulders. He was half tempted to take the resistance band off. Show this fool just how fast he really was. Just for the sake of getting under the intern's thin skin. Patience in this case was best. Whatever was going down up ahead involved that lightning-throwing psycho, then it was better to just wait and see. If Reiga was still alive, had fooled them into believing he died, then Sazanami doubted their chances. He knew what his answer was now. Yet Naruto put it best when he stated it wasn't an easy thing to do. Not when the certainty of death was staring you in the face. When your instincts were warning you to stop running headlong into danger. Yet, he had to go forward. To reach the one person he had come to respect most. Hokushin would admit he may have jumped a bit farther ahead than he intended. His initial thought was that the spiteful son of the curry shop owner was trying to get payback by taking Ranmaru, or that some other members of the Kurosuki family were still around, using the child for his power. Oh, how he wished one of those two cases had been right. The present alternative being too outrageous to even believe. Reiga standing on top of the pile of boulders. Looking down in shock at a collapsed and gaunt-looking Ranmaru. Shaking the child to wake him up. Just a few feet away was Karashi, trembling in fear as the mist swordsman bloodlust began to rise as he held the Ranmaru in his arms. Tell me what you did. What you did to Ranmaru. Karashi started crawling back. And nothing, I swear. It was you. Ranmaru, he and I dug you out from the rubble and then he laid his hands on you. You came back, boss. As outrageous as it sounded, it seemed like that was the only explanation. The boy's powers were largely unknown. Perhaps the dojutsu of his did more than just give him enhanced powers of perception. To bring the dead back to life, though? Even someone as well-traveled as himself doubted that. The best explanation was that Reiga had barely clung to life after being buried alive and the boy used some form of medical ninjutsu to heal the mist swordsman. Of course things go bad to worse, the stupid swordsman cursed as he finally showed up. Should have known better to not make sure he was really dead. Hokushin gave the swordsman a look of utter disbelief. Should have known better? Are you kidding me? This was too egregious to believe. How could anyone survive being hit by a jutsu beyond the master rank? Welcome to our team. Things going sideways is our normal. Sazanami drew his sword. You need to go and find the kid. I'll hold him off until you get back. For a brief moment Hokushin was stunned by the swordsman's willingness to sacrifice himself to stop the mist ninja. If anything, the scuffy Ronin was barely at the level of a fresh chunin when it came to fighting. Even that was generous in Hokushin's opinion. Now Hokushin thought the man had some ridiculous notion that could hold out against someone who wielded legendary swords and could handily defeat a jonin by himself. Utterly ridiculous. No, it was probably just a ploy for the swordsman to stay in the master's good graces. To stay ahead of the others and him in winning his favor. Hokushin would have scoffed if it wasn't so obvious. If anyone was going to delay the mist swordsman, then it would be him. He was stronger than the others, save for the master himself. The only person who would be credited as a hero would be him alone. Huh? Don't be ridiculous. What can someone who can't even control his chakra properly do? Why don't you go find the young master while I distract Reiga? To emphasize his unwillingness to go along with the swordsman's wishes, he started jumping down to the base of the chasm. Reiga was already aware of his presence. Taking to vent his rage on them instead. Not waiting to be picked off by the maniac, Hokushin opted to use his camouflage jutsu to blend into the landscape. Without Ranmaru, the mist swordsman wouldn't be able to sense him out. Leaving him to use stealth to delay Reiga until master arrived. Little worms. Your tricks won't work on me. I won't let you go. Lightning strike armor. Connecting the two blades together at the hilts, the mist ninja's weapon turned into a double-bladed sword. Spinning above him as the skies roared with a blue streak upon him. Reiga's entire body ignited in a pulsing hum of electricity. Surrounding and enveloping his entire body. It shot out in all directions. No rhyme or reason to its pattern. Several of which headed in his directions. Seeing little recourse and his plan pointless in the face of this overwhelming power, Hokushin started forming his seals. While nowhere near as strong as his master's, it would be enough to stop this onslaught. Water style, water wall. Firing the jutsu from his mouth, a cone-shaped barrier intercepted the random firings. Hokushin thought it would be enough to insulate and redirect the electrical current. He found that assumption wrong. He screamed in pain as the lightning not only cut through the water but struck him right in the chest. His back slamming against the stone behind him as the scent of burnt skin filled his nose. Everything in his body tingled in a stabbing pain. His weakened position wasn't one that Reiga let slip. The Mist Ninja already had his blades poised to run him through. I don't think so. To Hokushin and Reiga's surprise was a blade snapping out, blocking both of the Kiba blades. Hazily, Hokushin turned his head to see the stupid swordsman standing there. His arm stretched out with his katana in a one-handed block stance. While it was impressive he was able to block in such an awkward position, it was only doable because of one thing. The blade was coated with blue chakra, flowing out in a steady and focused stream. Sazanami was controlling the flow of his chakra, something he couldn't do 3 days ago. Annoyingly, he acted like it was the most casual thing in the world. If you want to dance with swords, then allow me to be your partner. I reckon you'll have a better time with me. A swordsman? Wait, that technique. Ah, I see, you're a samurai, Reiga acknowledged. It's been a while since I had a funeral for one of those. Not quite. Sazanami smirked as he stealthily slid his sheath out and jabbed Reiga in the chest. There was enough force to send him back several feet without the residual lightning affecting Sazanami due to the sheath being an insulator. It was a cheap move. Not one a noble and honorable samurai would use. But certainly something a rugged, ill-mannered, and idiotic Ronin would do. Are you still breathing, feet kisser? If his body wasn't in so much pain he would have said something clever and witty back. For now he just wanted to remain conscious and alive. Perfect. 100%. Great. Then if you can move, I'll need your help with a plan. Both of you, in fact. The swordsman turned to Karishi, who was trying to climb the cliff and get away. Hey Karishi. Go find Menma and bring him here. Tell him there are injured people. Do you understand? Yeah? I mean yes. Reiga just laughed at the open, shouting. Yes, go and find those who have wronged me. I'll be happy to kill them after finishing off both of you. We'll see about that, won't we? The swordsman took a half step back, lowering his voice to a whisper. In turn, I need you to grab Ranmaru and carry him to someplace out in the open. The kid's barely clinging to life, so it should draw attention for the others to show up. Reiga should follow you. I'll cover you and slow him down. He let out a haughty chuckle. If you can handle it, I mean. He hated being so flagrantly taunted like this. Right now though he didn't have much of a chance against the Mist Ninja. Cursing, he pushed his body up, ready to move along to the stupid swordsman's plan. If nothing else, he would show his master that he put his life on the line to save this boy. Just when things couldn't get any worse, the weather starts pissing on him too. The rainstorm that chased them the past few days finally caught up. Like some bad omen, as the lightning-enhanced monster was chasing them up towards the peak of the highest cliff in the area. His plan certainly had its flaws. Sazanami wasn't sure which of the lightning was natural and which was being flung at them by the crazed ninja. It all seemed to be angling towards them in some way. He wasn't stupid enough not to realize they were the tallest objects on this flat surface. The clouds above them were barely hanging above their heads. Nothing about this terrain was to their advantage in terms of a straight fight. However, this spot could be seen for miles. Reiga, not being of sound mind, would cause nothing less than a rampage would get everyone's attention. It was a matter of just holding out. Or, that was Sazanami's plan initially. When he finally had his answer, his chakra just clicked. No longer did it feel like a clunky barrel of water. Now there was a calm flow. Like a steady fire. It was drudged up through a trade he honed over a decade that valued patience and focus. He had intended to try and go back, if he could, to that life after his innocence in that murder case was revealed. Life didn't seem like it wanted him to go back to being Tokichi, the simple bladesmith of his small village. Nor did he want to. Get back here. Give me back Ranmaru. Reiga's screaming preceded lightning ripping up the earth. He had to push the intern out of the way as the attack nearly cut them both. We need to hurry. I'm trying. The intern wheezed. The damage of the attack he took was evident. Sazanami had to give the man props for even remaining conscious after taking millions of volts in the chest. He was struggling along. His speed halved in comparison from before. They needed to move faster. Get back here. Give Ranmaru back to me. Sazanami moved to incept a bolt of lightning. Never in his life did he think he would ever use his sword to block an actual bolt of lightning. It never even occurred to him how it would feel. There was a heaviness to it, along with a tingling sensation in his arms. Most likely the lightning that was bypassing his chakra and was hitting his nerve endings with the runoff. Pushing more chakra out, the lightning scattered just as another bolt headed his way. It was hard enough to stop one, but Rega could hurl them with ease. Avoiding as best they could was the only viable option while saving his energy for the ones they couldn't. In a few moments that would become harder as they could see the edge of the cliff up ahead, narrowing at the end and leaving them vulnerable for a full-on attack they couldn't dodge. Lightning ball. Bursting just over his head, another attack was poised to hit Hokushin. It was already too far ahead for him to block. Look out! Hokushin turned his head to see the incoming attack. It was hard to tell what was running through his mind at that moment, but whatever it was, Sazanami knew he figured the guy wrong. Sure, he was a huffy pain in the ass with questionable motives. What he did was something he would never have expected. The assassin tossed the boy out of his arms just ahead of before holding out his arms. If he had held Ranmaru, no doubt the attack would have killed the small child. He stood his ground as the attack hit him head on. A loud scream cried out in pain as the electrical current surged around his body. Hokushin fell to his knees, swaying slightly before slumping forward onto his stomach. Ha ha ha. Now to finish him. Rega took his moment of shock to leap over Sazanami and cut down onto Hokushin, bearing his twin swords. Sazanami wouldn't let Rega kill him. Frustration building in him and harnessing his chakra into his sword, he swung it in an arc, letting the energy slide out to the tip of his blade. A shining blue arc flew towards the mist ninja. Forging flash. It was wider than Naruto's, with the large arc slamming against the crazy bastard's back. Sadly, his lightning armor didn't give. While it didn't cut Rega, he was instead thrown forward. He rolled several feet towards the cliff's edge, only kicking up to his feet at the last second. It only seemed to enrage the mist swordsman even more. Taking this moment, he ran up to Hokushin and Ranmaru. His heart lurched for several moments before realizing they were both still alive. After that last attack, he knew the assassin wouldn't be getting up anytime soon. So it just left him now. Bending down, he took Hokushin's katana from his hilt, needing every advantage he could get. Normally only used to a single blade, the scrolls he sorted through wrote of techniques with two blades. He schemed them, seeing as he opted for techniques that only used one. Now he had a reason to use two. The Kiba blades in Rega's hands combined with his new goal were driving him to win this battle. He would break through his limits in this fight or die trying. He undid the chakra band from his waist, letting his normal weight and chakra levels return. Holding out both swords, he made his declaration. Rega Kurosuki. Prepare yourself. After this day your swords will be mine. My swords. Rega laughed, almost spitting at his boast. You really think somebody like you could wield the power of these blades? You know nothing about them, let alone what it takes to wield them. That's right. He knew nothing. Nothing about how the blades worked or the level of dedication or technique that went into making them. That's why he wanted to possess them. To learn and grow. Not just as a swordsman but as his true profession, a bladesmith. I will. I don't care about being the strongest, but I love making swords. Proud of everyone I ever made. Every fiber I put into making them. So I will learn everything there is to know about kenjutsu and sword making. Not just those of samurai and ninja, but everything in the whole damn world. Then I will forge a blade that makes all others pale in comparison. A sword that only the truly worthy can wield and holds the power to cut worlds apart. One that bears the creator's name of Sazanami Tokichi. Sounds like a good dream to me. I can't wait to play with it after you make it. He 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 he. A voice said behind him. He turned just enough to see Naruto standing there along with Menma and Sasami. Sorry we're late. Had some measurement issues, may need to borrow one of those chakra bands later for, well, it doesn't really matter. So, how's the new guy doing? Breathing, he replied. Menma, both of them need your help. Just leave it to me. He let out a sigh of relief. Now he could fight without worrying about them. This would be an intense battle, so he didn't want any friendly fire. With Sasami watching over them as well, he didn't need to be concerned. It just left one thing. Sazanami stuck his blade out in front of Naruto as he tried to pass him. "Sorry kid, but this is my fight." Naruto gave him an irritated stare. "I told you that I dash." "Shut up. Whether you like it or not, Naruto, you are a kid. No amount of drinking or fancy clothes changes that." He shook his head, knowing he needed to get this out now. "You told us that your sensei wanted you to make every day fun, so that's what you need to do. We aren't here for you to be our savior, kid. We're here to get you there. I will get stronger, as strong as you if I have to, not only to forge a perfect sword but to lighten your burden. So that you can live that life." Sazanami, Naruto breathed. He started walking forward towards the crazed mist swordsman. His chakra blazing free and brilliantly in both swords. After today he would no longer be the one who needs saving. Sazanami would be the blade that cuts through the path for his friends. Of all the things he expected to hear, that was the last thing Naruto would have thought. He could admit that he was mainly helping the others grow stronger so that they could fulfill their own goals. The list in Noriyuki's black book was just a means for them to help them put their training into practice and measure their progress. There wasn't a point since his sensei left that he assumed he wouldn't be in a position where he may have to do it all on his own. Sazanami thought differently. Fangs of lightning. Cross-forging flash. A ball of lightning struck the X-shaped arcs of chakra that flew from Sazanami's blades. They lacked the sharpness his chakra strike normally had, but doing such a thing took a ridiculous amount of practice and focus to do properly. Naruto doubted Sazanami could come close to that level anytime soon. What really worried Naruto was two things. One, he had no clue as to how much chakra Sazanami actually had. He was tough and stuck out longer than most, so he figured it was a fair amount. Against Rega's though? It was hard to tell without someone with the Byakugan. That brought out the second matter, the weather. The mist swordsman was stronger than he had been a few days ago. Much stronger. His lightning was being empowered by the natural lighting from above. His sensei had given him a book on weather patterns right before he left. Naruto hadn't even opened it up once since then, but assumed this was why Noriyuki gave it to him in the first place. Harnessing the weather could strengthen your element beyond its normal means. Level of technique? Naruto couldn't tell. Their speed was about even, so it came down to Kenjutsu. Neither were getting a solid hit in. Rega's stance was more aggressive and the number of attacks he was doing were greater than Sazanami. In his friend's favor, each attack, while more defense and less frequent, seemed to push the mist ninja back. It seemed Sazanami was using more power and trying to get his opponent to whittle down and use his chakra. Rega? Rega! Rushing up behind him was Ranmaru. After Menma finished his jutsu and nearly passed out again, both Hokushin and Ranmaru were healthy again. The former of whom still looked a little worse for wear. Rega actually stopped mid-fight, gaping at his former ward. "Are Ranmaru? Is that really you? You're alive?" "Yes, it's me. I'm all right now," Ranmaru said, holding out his arms to show him. The mist ninja was nearly bursting into tears. He held out his arms, the purple-haired boy. "Thank goodness. Come here, Ranmaru. Together we can defeat them once and for all." Ranmaru shook his head. "I can't, we can't be together anymore," he spoke sadly. What no? Shut up." Rega was gripping his ears, looking like he was losing what shred of sanity he had left. "I don't want to hurt people anymore. I saved you so that we could redeem ourselves. Start over and experience what true living is. My dream is to see everything this world has and to become strong enough to stand on my own. No. Stop spouting this selfish nonsense. You can't betray me, Ranmaru. If you do, we can't be as one." "I won't. This is what I want," Ranmaru declared. Sazanami readied his swords. If this is what Ranmaru wants, then it's his choice. He's given you a second chance and you would rather stew in your own misery. Well, Ranmaru's different. Whatever dangers lie ahead, we won't carry him on our backs but help him walk beside us. I see, yes. You have friends now. You don't need me anymore. Rega slowly raised his blades. Preparing to fight again. I won't be able to remember you as you once were. I have to give you a funeral. This looked to be it. The final clash. Raga's chakra was rising beyond anything he had shown before. It was like the sky was crying with every pulse of thunder. The Kiba blades remained steady as Raga himself was spinning. A mixture of wind and lightning started swirling around him. It quickly rose higher and higher until a form started taking shape. A giant dragon looming over all of them. It looked like a jutsu that could stand up to a wind-enhanced Rasengan. Naruto really wanted to step in. Normally he would have at this point, which was the point Sazunami was trying to make. His friend didn't move from his spot. Didn't flinch like everyone else at the towering jutsu in front of him. Sazunami paused for a moment, looking like he was readying himself. He set one of his swords down. Using only one and raising it above his head. The blue chakra wrapped around Sazunami's katana slowly began to shrink. Narrowing and running smoothly along the edge. Then beyond any reasonable expectation the chakra began to turn white. Naruto was at a loss for words. His friend had set the other sword down, most likely to use the bird hand seal to alter his chakra. Sazunami had watched him do it while training at his sensei's hidden base in the Land of Wind. To do it with no practice, on the first try. Naruto was beginning to think that Sazunami may actually become as strong as him someday soon. At the moment Raga's jutsu rushed towards them, Sazunami's blade swung down. Lightning Dragon Tornado. Polishing Stroke. They all watched on with bated breath as Sazunami was covered by Raga's jutsu. The others gasped and cried out for him, but Naruto knew. He saw it clearly, even in this horrid weather. Sazunami's attack cut through the jutsu, hitting Raga across the chest. With a single stroke of his sword he put everything he had into shutting down Raga's strongest attack and brought him down. The jutsu faded away, revealing the outcome to the others. Raga was on his knees, blood trailing from his torso. His swords dropped on the ground in front of him as he stared ahead with an almost serene look on his face. Raga must have known that he had lost and was now accepting the outcome. "Hey Jinchuriki," he started, not directly looking at Naruto when he spoke. "You'll look out for him, won't you?" A bit stunned to hear that term but took the man's dying wish seriously, he answered. "I prefer being called a Gyuna, but yes, I will help Ranmaru find a reason to thrive in this world." Raga smiled. "That's good. Hey samurai, I give you my blades. If you seek to make a sword that surpasses all others, then these will be necessary. Know that I don't envy the goal you chose. Many demons lie waiting for you. I'll be ready. Ranmaru, you're finally free now." Standing up, the Mist Swordsman raised both his hands up towards the sky. His last words echoing throughout the mountain range. A bolt of lightning shot down upon him, enveloping his body as it slowly disintegrated him. "Come lighting. Give me a funeral." The only thing Naruto could do was hold Ranmaru as he cried for his fallen friend. "It's not funny," Sasami shouted, flustered by Sazunami's antics. He laughed at how riled up she was. Not like he wouldn't try and make the whole thing a little more interesting. "Come on little lady, yeah, I got to admit it was a little funny. You rigged the scale to make me seem twice as heavy as everyone else. Everyone thought I was fat." She slugged him good on his arm. For a girl that barely weighs 85 pounds she had quite the left hook. He was sure he would have a bruise on it for several days. "Ow. Okay. I'm sorry. When I asked for our weight in gold I didn't quite expect it would be this much." Naruto whined, dragging a sack twice his size behind him. "Tell me again why we couldn't just seal all this." Menma, who was carrying the most for some reason, answered. "Because we have limited sealing scrolls." "Just great," Naruto cursed. "All right. It's decided, you all need to lose some weight. How can gold be so heavy?" "You say that, but you're carrying your own weight, kid." Yes, after getting their reward, they found themselves doing the world's worst physical exercise by carrying their actual weight for nearly a day. He had suggested they bury some of it to dig up later. While Naruto found the idea romantic, it was shot down because it was better to have it ready to sell. One of the miners had Naruto their guild card for the commodities office as a thank you. Hopefully they would be able to give the gold up for some real money. Carrying around this much would only draw suspicion. especially when they were about to enter the Land of Fire. Naruto hadn't said much about the reason behind his whole stint at Hozuki Castle. It didn't seem to matter to the kid much. At least he tried to show that it didn't. The mood the kid had been in was probably because they were getting closer to the border. Thankfully, it seemed to lighten a bit since yesterday. If you'd like, I could help carry some, Ranmaru offered. Yes, master. If you need me to, I would be happy to carry more. Hokushin chirped. Those two were circling around Naruto like buzzards, trying to be helpful. Menma tried to horn in too before the kid told them to back several feet away. At least in Ranmaru's case it was kind of cute. Yes, their little group was growing. After having one last meal at Grandma Sancho's place they said their goodbyes with the old lady giving them food stuff for the road. At least that had been easy to carry. As such it was given to Ranmaru to carry as he wanted to start training to become strong. Sazanami really liked the kid. That's okay Ranmaru-chan. Naruto cooed. Just keep doing your best and you'll be stronger in no time. Naruto did too apparently. Almost too much. Be careful guys and stay close, Naruto ordered. We will be sneaking in through one of the secure zones along the border. I was stationed as a patrol guard for 2 weeks once and know a safe route through. Yes, beyond the trees up ahead was the Land of Fire. I was now in sight. Sazanami gripped his new blades, anticipating the time when he would need them. Hopefully it wasn't too soon. It would take time to adjust and learn the secrets that powered them. Sadly, Sazanami knew they were never that lucky. Canonical Omake. Noriyuki-sensei's 5th special challenge. Mikuru was absolutely livid. After a minor dispute with his girlfriend, some guy she was cheating on him with comes in with his kit and destroys over 1 million ryo worth in pottery and glassware. The authorities all but turn a blind eye to it and the thugs he hired yesterday to rough them up came back all beaten up and crying. Absolutely livid. It's all because Akumi-chan had to go and start those stupid art lessons. Now every guy and his dog had leered at her naked body. Akumi's art making her out to be Nagaya's whore. One little argument and she goes off to some asshole in some fancy clothes. Then he gets involved in their business and decides to destroy his life's work. He would make them pay. I don't care what it takes. I'll pay you double your asking price if you bring him in fast. He shouted to the 5 shinobi in front of his desk. They were former steam ninja so he was certain they would be able to bring that asshole in. Of course Mikuru-san. So long as the money is good then he's as good as gone. The lead ninja said bowing his head. Perfect. He's down by the inn by the pier. You should find him right away. He'll be the only one wearing a cheap suit. Cheap suit? I'm insulted. This suit is a custom-tailored 2 million ryo masterpiece, designed and fitted by the great Hibiya himself. A loud and annoyingly familiar voice shouted. I am outraged by such an insult. Insulted, I say. Standing just at the threshold of the door was the bastard in question. That stupid grin on his face that was mocking him. There. He's right there. Get him. None of them moved. They were like statues just staring at the wall. Unblinking and gaping in shock. I'm afraid the paralysis jutsu I used will be a tad problematic to their mission. Since they are aware of me I guess I'll bring them along too. Mikuru started backing up as the tall brown-haired man approached. His presence was much more menacing than before with teeth like fangs and eyes that held a strange diamond-like pattern. He was a monster. An honest-to-goodness monster. No. Please I'll leave you alone. I'll apologize. I'll do anything, just leave me alone. He begged. Sorry but anyone who has it out for true beauty and art deserves no mercy. The next moment he found himself in utter darkness. Not sure where he was or what was happening. It was like this for several moments. His hands and feet felt like they had been bound together and he could barely move. Only after slamming down against the grass did the bag over his head come off. They were in a forest. Deep too considering how dense it was. Beside him were the 5 ninjas he had hired all bound up as well. Standing not far off was the monster and his brood. The kid was covered in dirt, carrying a shovel in one hand. Just beside him were holes dug out. Mikuru knew what was about to happen. Seriously, Naruto. I told you I needed these holes to be 6 feet deep, 6 feet in length and 1 foot in width. These holes are totally off. Yeah, well, whose fault is it that I can barely hear? You set off those explosions during my meditation training, so it all sounded like a garbled mess. Yeah, no. Besides, you never told me what I was digging them for. So you made them 6 feet deep and 1 foot in width and length? What did you think we were doing? Planting trees. How the hell was I supposed to know? It doesn't matter, the monster sighed, waving his hands. Alright, listen up, idiots. Normally I would just toss you into the graves and leave you there to either dig your way out or starve or suffocate or, just about a whole bunch of other fun stuff. Since my hearing-challenged student could dig the holes properly, we'll leave this up to fate. Mikuru felt like he was going to faint. He was more than a little claustrophobic and had an immense fear of being buried alive. The monster walked up holding out a coin. He flicked it up and down, smiling like a demon from hell. Let's keep it simple, shall we? Heads or tails? That will determine if you get buried feet up or down. He bent over, dragging Mikuru up to his feet. Let's start with you, art hater. Heads or tails? That's it for part 11. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.